Right, welcome everybody. You might have to bear with me because my papers are all loose today for some reason. Mine haven't been delivered at home. So we'll make a start. If you can put phones on silent or switch them off. Right, membership of the committee. As present, yeah. Minutes of the previous meeting, can we agree as a true record? Cool. Item 3, declarations and interests. I'll start with Councillor Sokol.
None, Chair.
Councillor Pattison.
None, Chair.
Councillor Reeves.
None, Chair.
Councillor Pinnock.
Yes, I've had conversations with quite a few people on item 10, and all these opinions and so on have been noted, but no conclusions reached.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
None, Chair.
And Councillor Bellamy.
None, Chair.
And myself, none. This is a meeting of the public taking place on YouTube as well. Hopefully things will run smoothly. Item 5, any public questions?
None, Chair.
Right. We took 2 site visits this morning, one at Max Trucks and one at Greenhead College. Any deputations and petitions?
None received, Chair.
Right. First item, agenda item number 10. I think it's Victor.
Thank you, Chair. Victor Grayson, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. I've taken over this case from the previous case officer, Adam Walker. Members will recall that a position statement relating to this application was considered by this committee on the 21st of October of this year, and that a previous application for a residential development of 267 dwellings at this site was refused by this committee earlier this year. For that previous application, the single reason for refusal referred to 2 concerns. Firstly, the proposed mix of unit sizes, which was dominated by detached 4-bedroom dwellings and which would not have sufficiently met the needs of different household types. And secondly, the proposal to translocate the site's important hedgerow was not considered acceptable. The committee report now before members focuses on those 2 concerns and on comments made by members in October, and this presentation will have a similar focus. Just to remind members, this is an application for full planning permission for a residential development of 287 dwellings. Members have previously visited the site and will recall that it is bounded by residential streets to the north and the southeast, Nanhall Beck and Greenbelt land to the east, and Hunsworth Lane and employment uses to the southwest. Public footpaths run along the east and south edges of the application site. The site's important hedgerow runs from close to the centre of the site to its southern boundary. And here on this slide are images of the site's Hunsworth Lane frontage and the existing access at the terminus of Kilroyd Drive. The site is allocated for residential development in the local plan. This wider aerial view shows how the site relates to the surrounding highway network, including junction 26 of the M62, that's the Chain Bar roundabout to the west. This is the proposed layout. Apologies, members, this has been rotated almost 90 degrees, but if you can see my pointer pointing to Kilroyd Drive, that runs almost north-south. The layout is almost exactly as per the layout seen by members in October. 2 vehicular site entrances are proposed at Hunsworth Lane and Kilroyd Drive, and pedestrian connections to adjacent footpaths are proposed. This slide sets out how the proposals have changed from being a 267 unit scheme under the previous application to a 284 unit scheme, which is what members saw in October, to the 287 unit scheme now proposed. With reference to the previous reason for refusal, this table also illustrates how the proposed unit size mix has changed, including since October, with the number of 2- and 3-bedroom units having been increased and the number of 4-bedroom units having been decreased. These changes mean that the proposed development still comprises mostly of 4-bedroom dwellings. Members can see that 63% figure there in the top corner of the slide, and 71% of the proposed dwellings will be detached. However, there is now a greater number of smaller sized dwellings proposed, which would help to meet the needs of a broader range of people and their households. Given these improvements to the proposed unit size mix, it is considered that this part of the Council's previous reason for refusal has been satisfactorily addressed, and it is not recommended that planning permission be refused again on these grounds. This slide also provides members with more information regarding the proposed development's design, including an extract from the proposed site layout, which illustrates how the applicant has located some of the proposed terraced and semi-detached dwellings along the site's northwest boundary to help it reflect those types of buildings that already exist on Kilroy Avenue and Links Avenue. This slide also illustrates what some of the proposed development's semi-detached and terraced dwellings would look like, as shown in this earlier CGI, and images of some of the development's detached dwellings are also shown here. The applicant has also amended the proposed materials palette during the life of this application, as illustrated on the right. Buff brick is no longer proposed, red brick and artificial stone are proposed. Regarding the site's important hedgerow, members will recall the advice from officers in October that the applicant proposes an appropriate translocation method in line with industry best practice. This slide provides some illustration of the important hedgerow, its current location and its proposed new location. These proposals, however, changed yesterday. In addressing an objection from Yorkshire Water regarding planting within a sewer easement standoff zone, the applicant amended the proposed landscaping and no longer proposes the westernmost stretch of hedgerow. That stretch is about 85 metres in length. That's about a quarter of the 330 metre stretch that was to be provided along the site's southern boundary. The applicant will need to propose a new location within the site for that stretch of hedgerow, and this can be done given that there is ample space within the proposed open spaces to accommodate it. There were queries at the October committee meeting regarding on-site open space provision. These plans and paragraph 10.44 of the committee report detail the sizes of each area of open space. More detail and a financial contribution of up to £419,324 would be required to address the development's open space requirements. This slide details the proposed Hunsworth lane entrance, regarding which there were queries at the October committee meeting. Most importantly, with the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit at Hunsworth Lane, the 43-metre visibility splay proposed to the north of this entrance would be sufficient. A longer visibility splay could actually be provided, and the length and detail of this and any other necessary highway safety measures along Hunsworth Lane would be worked out at condition stage via a Section 38 application and following the submission of a road safety audit. This slide also shows the mineshaft calculated zone of influence plan, which demonstrates that the proposed layout and access would not be affected by this coal legacy feature. This is the fourth mineshaft that was the topic of the topic of previous objections from the coal authority, but this plan has now satisfied the coal authority. They no longer object to this application. And then this final slide, members, this shows the proposed affordable housing distribution, which is considered to be sufficiently pepper-potted about the site. A policy-compliant 20% provision is proposed. Regarding other points raised by members in October and other key planning considerations, all units would meet the minimum nationally described space standards. Regarding traffic impacts, assessments of the proposed development's impacts have been submitted and undertaken by officers, and these have taken into account cumulative impacts of other major developments in the area. Although 3 local junctions would operate or continue to operate beyond practical capacity, it is not considered that severe impacts warranting refusal of planning permission would arise. It is recommended that mitigation be secured in the form of contributions towards replacement signalling equipment and Bluetooth monitoring. The securing of a travel plan and a sustainable transport contribution are also recommended. No vehicular connections are proposed to Links Avenue or Maysbrook Avenue, and the recommended conditions will prevent improvised vehicular connections being created. A recommended condition would secure pedestrian connections in these locations. A condition is also recommended regarding the use of Hunsworth Lane for construction access, although some early limited use of other adjacent streets may be appropriate when the developer is first bringing plant onto the site. Adequate parking for residents and visitors is proposed. Adequate amenity will be provided for new residents and maintained for existing adjacent residents. Regarding drainage, the applicant has satisfactorily addressed the lead local flood authority's earlier concerns. Surface water would discharge from an attenuation tank to Nanhall Beck to the east and from another attenuation tank to Hunsworth Beck and the River Spen via an existing Yorkshire water overflow drain under Hunsworth Lane. Of note, the application site already drains to these watercourses. Foul water would discharge to existing sewers beneath the site and Hunsworth Lane. 112 representations plus another 3 today have been received in response to the Council's consultation. The points raised have been addressed in the committee report and update. The applicant has withdrawn a previously submitted financial viability appraisal. The proposed 287 dwellings would make a significant contribution towards housing supply in Kirklees, and this carries significant positive weight in the balance of planning considerations. Approval of full planning permission is recommended, subject to a Section 106 agreement and conditions, including the additional condition recommended in yesterday's committee update regarding the Hunsworth Lane access and its use by new residents of the development. Thank you, Chair.
Right, as first speaker is Mr. Rankin.
Yeah, I'll just need to dial him in, check.
We're having one or two problems, as you've probably guessed. So we'll move down to Councillor Kath Pinnock. We'll try Councillor Kath Pinnock on Teams.
Thank you, Chair. Committee will have heard, though I have to say we online did not hear the beginning of the presentation. However, committee have heard that a very similar application was refused in April. The applicant has done actually very little to change the original plans which were refused and has equally not chosen to go to appeal. There are some very considerable concerns with this application. First, there are key issues of council policy where the application fails. The density of houses on site, as explained in the report, is considerably lower than on other equivalent sites. Failure to have a higher density, as predicted in the local plan, results in greater pressure on safeguarded sites elsewhere in the borough and results in more greenfields being developed. The supplementary planning guidance adopted in July by the Council is an excellent policy, and it expects developments to have regard for their surroundings. In this application, the overwhelming majority of units are detached houses, yet in Hunsworth, the predominant types are semis and terraces. The whole purpose of this policy, which is actually a really good one, is that a new development should fit in. I'm not suggesting there should be no detached houses, but that there should be a much lower proportion. And the applicant has given no reason at all why that shouldn't be the case. Then there's a list of concerns and unanswered questions. Yorkshire Water, we've had at the 11th hour amended plans by the applicant who has known for a year about this siphon sewer and the legal requirements by Yorkshire Water and has left it to the very last minute to make an amendment. And I have to suggest on that issue alone, the application should at least be deferred so that the consequences of the amendment can be fully explored and whether or not Yorkshire Water agree to it. The access of Hunsworth Lane is another issue. And the bit I heard from the planning officer was that they were going to get construction later on in the development. I personally believe that it ought to be right from the outset. This is a very major development of considerable number of houses. The applicant will have the finance to build this access road initially so that all the construction equipment can go up the access road. And so less harm to existing residents is caused. And, you know, they need to create a parking place on the site too for all the construction workers. The third point I want to raise, which I don't think has been resolved properly, is that of traffic congestion. The previous report to committee from Highways said that the traffic light systems, both at Hunsworth Lane and Moor End, were both at or over capacity. And I've spoken to Highways officers who made those comments since, and they agreed that tinkering with them, which is what's happening now, would only give another 5 years at the most to help control congestion. You know, what they said is people will just have to put up with long queues. I'm not sure that's in anybody's interest, which brings me on to Chain Bar. And the M62 is already at capacity. The speed restrictions on the M62 as a smart motorway in a 12-month period, which included periods of lockdown, were imposed 30,000 times between junction 27 and junction 25. That's National Highways information, which indicates tells you exactly what the problems are, and yet all the applications around Chain Bar are going to add to this issue and problem for Cleckheaton and surrounding areas. I'm very concerned about the public transport issues. There is one bus a day, just one.
You wrap up now, Kath, please. That's nearly 5. Yeah.
You can't even get that. I've raised concerns about air quality, which has not been addressed, and the double hedge is not been dealt with at all.
Thank you, Kath. We're going to try John Lawson next.
I can try and speak again.
Are you there, John?
Yeah.
Right, your 5 minutes starts now.
Thank you. I'll begin could you switch on? Thank you. I'll begin by saying what I have to say comes in 2 parts. The first is about whether or not the application is acceptable at all. The second part is about whether it is acceptable in its current state or should it be improved. This application has been refused and is back with you as a resubmission, and that's a key word here. What we need to find out today is if the committee thinks that the reasons for the refusal still stand, or has enough been done to overcome them. The issue of LP11, housing mix and affordable housing, is still a problem for the application, and I'd ask committee to deliberate if the tweaking shown in the table on paragraph 5.1, page 17, is substantial enough to change your minds. In particular, does a decrease of 10 4-bedroom houses from 191 to 181 do enough to overcome the domination of that house type mentioned in the previous refusal? Or does it represent an inappropriate, imbalanced mix of housing in the village? I'd like you also to consider that the housing density of the site, referred to in paragraph 10.14 in page 31, and I quote, the under-delivery of the dwellings at this site is a shortcoming of the proposed development that attracts negative weight in the balance of relevant planning considerations. Measured against policy, this application falls short of an efficient use of the site by 31%. It seems counterintuitive, I know, for me to be arguing for more houses on a site that I disagree should go into the local plan in the first place. But what we have here is the worst of both worlds. The site is being developed with enough housing to make a mess of the local traffic network, but not enough housing to attract a public transport solution to mitigate the situation. This is green land that has been put rightly or wrongly in the local plan. It was put there to attract developers. One of the saving graces of the local plan is that we are no longer in the position of having to take what we are given and be forced to like it or lump it. We now have the 5-year supply of building land, and we should use this new position to make sure we get the very best deal out of our green land for Kirklees. If this is the best that the developer can offer, I would hope the committee refuse the application again and let it be tested at appeal. The second part of what I had to say was about if you decide that on balance this application is acceptable today, please do not delegate to officers to chase outstanding or unclear information. I understand from what I caught at the beginning that an attempt to counter Yorkshire Water's serious objection regarding easement was received today. That is surely not enough time for you to consider it if it is adequate or not. There are 37 conditions on this application. Over 20 are for submissions of reports. I'd ask you that if you're not going to refuse this application today, please defer your decision until it is clear what you are making a decision on. This weekend, I spoke to a lady from Brookfield Terrace, which is just downstream, literally, from the development, already suffers from flooding and fears that the development could exacerbate her situation, something that planning is supposed to avoid. She fears that the floods could worsen household insurance will be more difficult to obtain, and that her property could be at risk of structural damage. I couldn't, in all honesty, tell her it was going to be all right. We've seen video evidence of the flooding that takes place around the site now. Will the retention tanks cope with all the water? And will they be maintained properly to make sure that they will still work at their maximum capacity in 10 or 20 years' time? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John.
I'll go back to Mr. Rankin, shall I?
Yeah. Right, Mr. Rankin, you've got 3 minutes, starting from now.
Thank you. I'm Mr. Rankin and will address 2 issues, flooding on and around Brookfield View and second access from Hunsworth Lane and conditions. A major factor in house and property flooding next to the Barn Road Bridge is lack of capacity in the culvert. Nanhall Beck flows through this. The bridge and culvert are under the control of the Highway Authority. With intense rainfall and increase in river flow, there is inadequate evacuation of water through the culvert, and flooding is the result. This is not in any flood risk assessment. Development would amplify and perpetuate flood risk for residents on and around Brookfield View. Nanhall Beck is the intended destination for surface water runoff from the development, so the existing problem will be made worse. Section 159 of the National Planning Policy Framework says the development should be made safe for its lifetime without increasing flood risk elsewhere. Clearly that won't happen. If the local authority themselves are contributors to the flooding nuisance inflicted on residents now, then acts of non-feasance could justifiably be claimed. Approval of the development would make things worse, so I request that the committee refuse this application. Additional to this, I firmly believe there are major compliance issues with sections 9, 19 and 21 of the Flood and Water Management Act 2010 and with section 14A of the Land Drainage Act 1991. I don't know of any planned infrastructure upgrade or whether highway contributions have been sought under section 278 of the Highways Act 1980 from Harron Homes, or if any consideration has been given to the Barn Road Bridge and culvert in the first place, and the crucial significance in weighing against the proposed development. Even an 8-month deferment before reconsideration of this scheme, major deficiencies remain. There is grave concern amongst residents about Kilroy Drive becoming site access. The concerns of traffic intensification and highway safety. The blind bend before Whitehall Road is a serious road safety factor on such a narrow road. Construction traffic alone will pose a serious hazard. There is supposed to be second access from Hunsworth Lane. This has been recommended by Kirklees planning through the last 2 years, but there are no cast iron conditions for this. Construction of second access should be a first priority, but isn't. Clearly the intent is to make Kilroy Drive sole access by the back door. Given Harron Homes' reticence about building second access anyway in the absence of any agreement over building it, Why have conditions not been imposed, for example, through Town and Country Planning Regulations 2018? Matters should have been resolved before being heard by the Planning Committee. They haven't. I must request refusal through failure by the local authority to mitigate the most adverse effect on residents. Thank you very much. That's the end of my statement.
Thank you. That's bang on 3 minutes.
Mr. Mason will try now.
Yeah. Right, Mr. Mason, you have 3 minutes starting from now.
Thank you. I live adjacent to Nambrook Beacon. I've done for 40 years. And I just want to say how much the topography of the land round here has actually changed in 40 years due to sort of underlying mine shafts and the rest of it. And I feel desperately sorry for the people down at Brookfield who already have flooding problems. One lady describing water going in the front door and out the back. And I just wonder how much developers appreciate that merchant fields are a very big natural soakaway for the rain that falls. When you think about climate change, it's only going to get worse in the years to come. And I just feel like with sacrificing land that will never get back again for some houses, to sacrifice other houses, i.e. down at Brookfield. I know they propose drainage tanks and various untried methods in this locality anyway. And I just think the risks just aren't worth taking, to be honest. I realise houses have got to be built, but I just think it's at the wrong time and in the wrong area. When you think of a place like Hebden Bridge, who are busy doing the opposite, trying to create natural soakaways and planting trees because of their problems they've had with flooding, etc. I just think we're going the opposite direction here. We're creating a problem for the future. I know that Yorkshire Water, the Environmental Agency and other people have got concerns. And I just don't see the development company coming forward, openly talking to local people, trying to allay fears or anything else. As an ex-teacher, the lack of contact and not being open is sort of symptomatic of not having the answers or not knowing the answers, even if it's to hand. And I'd just be grateful if the planning committee could take these sort of things into consideration. I know houses haven't been built yet, so hopefully there's an opportunity to say, look, let's look elsewhere rather than Merchants Fields. I just think it's a bad choice in a bad area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, we've got Doreen Sugden who's in the chamber.
Yeah. Right, Doreen, you have 3 minutes starting from now.
I live on Brookfield View, and Nan Hall Beck runs at the back of my house. In the last 30 years, it's not been bad. The last 4, the rainwater going down there is horrendous. If you stood in, you want it to take you down. The culvert at the bottom isn't big enough to take away all the water, so the field floods, which has already been refused planning permission. And the houses have been flooded. I'm one of the fortunate ones that haven't as yet. But when you apply for insurance, I'm automatically asked if I live in a flood area. What do I say? The bottom half does. I'm lucky, I'm on a bit of a slope, it doesn't. But there's no telling what time will bring with all the water that's possibly going to flood down that beck. It's not very wide. And at the end of the day, I don't know where we stand with it. And I wonder who will be responsible for future if we can't sell us homes. That's what I've got to say. Thank you.
Right. Rachel Flanders on Teams is next.
Rachel, can you unmute your microphone?
Right, Rachel, you've got 3 minutes starting from now.
Chair, members of the panel, thank you for letting me speak today in support of this scheme. We have worked with officers to address the previous reason for refusal and have made further amendments to the scheme following the feedback received when the position statement was considered by committee in October. We welcome the recommendation to approve the application advanced by your planning officer and the conclusions of the officer's report that the revised proposal does address the previous reason for refusal. The 2 key areas of concern relating to the previous application were the quantum of 4-bed detached dwellings and the proposed translocation of the important hedgerow. Suzanne Mansfield of FPCR has provided supporting evidence to demonstrate the hedgerow can be successfully translocated, and she will be addressing members separately. In relation to the part of the hedgerow that needs to be relocated to address the Yorkshire water easement, this can be relocated in its entirety within the site, and there is a condition which will address this, and as such there is no need to defer on this issue. In relation to the housing mix, we have worked proactively with officers and have provided the mix of dwellings requested. The scheme now proposes 10 fewer 4-bed detached dwellings and an additional 10 2-bed dwellings and 20 3-bed dwellings. The Council's housing mix policy does not set out a prescriptive mix, but refers to evidence of housing need. The most recent evidence is set out in the SHMA, which is now 5 years old and arguably out of date, not least following the pandemic, with more people now working from home and requiring office space and therefore additional rooms. Nevertheless, the 2016 SHMA highlighted a requirement for 3-bed dwellings for which 20 additional properties in this category have been provided. The scheme will also provide 57 much-needed affordable dwellings comprising 2- and 3-bedroom homes, and these are an important part of the overall housing mix in meeting the different needs of households. It is also relevant to highlight that the predominant type of housing in the immediate locality comprises terrace and semi-detached properties, which are typically smaller 2- and 3-bed homes. The provision of larger detached dwellings therefore adds to the housing mix in this area and will allow families to move up the housing ladder while staying in the area, which then frees up smaller houses in the process. In working with council officers, the scheme before you has addressed all technical matters, including flood risk and highways. Harron Homes are committed to delivering this allocated housing site, which will boost housing supply in this area. On the basis that the previous reason for refusal has been addressed, I respectfully request that members support the officer's recommendation today and grant approval of this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. Stopping with Teams again, and it's Susan Mansfield.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Suzanne Mansfield, and I'm the author of the hedgerow translocation method statement prepared for Merchant Fields and responding to concerns over whether it's possible to translocate a double hedge present at the centre of the site. I have over 30 years experience as an ecological consultant specialising in habitat creation and translocation. My company is a multidisciplinary consultancy which specialises in large-scale ecologically sensitive schemes from inception to implementation and post-development monitoring, with over 95 ecologists and arboriculturists who are capable of practically managing clerk of works on site. I've worked with British Coal and UK.
Rachel, can you hear me?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Suzanne.
Yeah, I've just been interrupted. I've just found, I'll carry on. I've worked with British Coal and UK Coal, who are some of the earlier pioneers in developing hedgerow translocation techniques. And we have developed these techniques further for extensive stretches of hedges across the country. The techniques are based on strong horticultural principles, which would be recognisable to gardeners who routinely move shrubs around their gardens: coppicing, lifting and ground preparation, weed control and watering, and all basic techniques which we employ, but on a greater scale than one might expect in a garden. The techniques are tried and tested over many years in different soils and locations, and we have done this over the East Midlands and the North and North East, and we've provided a series of examples of this in our statement. It's important to understand it's not just the shrubs that we take, but the soils and the bank, seed bank and bugs in the soils, which are a valuable resource. Our success comes from a long experience working alongside skilled contractors and specialised kit, which will be available here. Success rate for translocating hedges is good, but can be much better through commitment to post-extraction management, which Heron Homes is committed to. I'm therefore confident this can be achieved, and the translocated hedge will be saved for perpetuity and will be able to contribute to the ecological resource of the locality. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Suzanne, for that. Right. Members, it's over to you. Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. This is clearly a somewhat complicated issue, but there are some quite straightforward points that need to be made. It's an allocated site. I accept that. I didn't like it in the first place, and it greatly changes the character of Hunsworth by adding the capacity 300 to the existing settlement. However, that argument was lost. It's now in the plan, but that does not mean to say, because it's allocated, and therefore there is a presumption in favour of development, that we accept just anything that is put before us. The capacity of the site is an issue. One of the points that we made prior to the refusal earlier in the year was that there was an over-reliance on detached houses in the plan that was put forward. There still is an over-reliance on detached houses, which is not a characteristic of the surrounding area. Now, as Councillor Cathpinnock said, we're not suggesting there should be no detached houses, merely that the reduction in the number of detached houses is not enough to give a comparison with the surrounding area, which the local plan actually encourages. It encourages new development to fit in as far as possible with what's already there. The danger with providing a completely different sort of setup is that you will have a development, or could have a development, that is entirely separate from the rest of Hunsworth because of the house type. I'm not saying that will happen, but there is always a danger that could happen. So I can see an argument for asking the developers to go away again and reduce the number of detached houses. This, of course, could mean an increase in the total number, but we've already observed that the capacity is over 300, and we've got numbers below that, so there is a bit of leeway. And if I can come on to another issue, which I think is pertinent, relating to public transport. It's not counterintuitive particularly, but if you have a large development here and an underused bus route, as has been indicated, 1 bus a day, then there is a good chance that if you provide a bus route of greater frequency, then there will be a number of people who might well want to use it. And indeed, the provision in the Section 106 agreements about Metro cards and things like that would make more sense if a better bus service was being provided as well. So I think that there is a case for increasing the numbers, thereby increasing the diversity of houses on the site. There are one or two issues which I think need to be cleared up. The other one that does seem to me to warrant a request to defer it is the sewer easement that Councillor Cathpinnock mentioned in relation to the translocated hedgerow. And I'm not sure, not absolutely certain that issue, which stems from a request by Yorkshire Water, has been properly dealt with, at least not to my satisfaction anyway. There is one other small issue, I may come back later, but this is to do with the bits of open space that exist on the site. Some of them, well, in fact, if one were to go to the plan, you would see that they are coloured blue, and they are odd bits of open space. Some on the edge of Links Avenue, one right in the middle of the site, and it's not clear what their function is, or indeed what they are. I'm not sure that they serve any useful purpose, other than maybe a bit of grass that people walk over, and it doesn't get looked after properly. I will briefly touch on drainage. There is a culvert well away from the site at the bottom of Brookfield View, which restricts the flow of water of the Nanhall Beck, and may in part be the cause of the flooding that has occurred down there, and not sure that this application can do much about that, because it's well outside the site and clearly out of the control of the developers. But I think what people on Brookfield View want is an assurance that the drainage of water from this site on Merchant Fields, when it is developed, will not make their situation worse. That's a good principle in planning, that if something needs to be done, that it shouldn't make it worse. I'll leave it at that point at the moment, but at the moment I am exploring the possibility of deferring it again to try and sort out the house type issues and the easement. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Greaves.
Thanks, Chair. Well, let me start off by saying that I'm certain that at some point in the future this site will be developed, but before it is, there's still a lot of outstanding issues that need to be addressed. The previous refusal was based upon housing mix, and I agree that this issue has not been resolved, certainly in respect of the proportion of detached and semis. The other reason was the hedgerow. We seem to be in a bit of a loop here. Until everybody knows where the Yorkshire water infrastructure is, how can anybody be sure exactly where that hedgerow can go? All we know is that a fair chunk of what was going to be relocated isn't. So I'm comfortable that the hedgerow can be relocated. We've heard from the expert. It's exactly where to. There are other issues as well. The key one for me is this Huntress Road access point. So one of our conditions is that it's going to be used as construction access, but we've got another condition that says it doesn't need to be brought about until some of the houses are occupied. So I cannot comprehend how that could work in practice. This road needs to be, this access point needs to be created on day one. It's the starting point for the development. There's an awful lot in the Section 106 agreement that needs to be agreed. I know that the applicant challenged that and then have withdrawn the challenge, but that's not to say they actually agree with where things are at. There's a whole load of conditions there. Now, I'm happy to propose refusal, but officers have indicated that they think they could reach an understanding on the outstanding issues and on the Section 1 agreement and to make sure we've got those conditions. And they've indicated they could do that within 3 months. So I'd be minded to refer to make to move deferral if officers think that that's achievable within 3 months. If they don't think it is, then I'm happy to move refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think the main points are what we refused it for last time, which was the mix of housing, which seems to be being addressed half-cocked and half-hearted. You know, we have, it seems to have been dealt with somewhat, but not to a point where we feel comfortable with the mix. The next is the hedgerow, where at the 11th hour we're now told that over 25% of it won't be allocated where it originally said it was going to be allocated, which I find almost perverse in the fact that it's come back with this, was it yesterday where we were told? So, and then the other is the access on Hunsworth, where I use that road 2 or 3 times a day, and I think it's been mentioned that it's a 30-mile-an-hour road, which is irrelevant. I've seen push bikes going down there more than 30 miles an hour, so you know, it's almost an irrelevance what speed limit is. It's what speed the cars are actually travelling on that sharp bend and that incline. So I would be happy to second the refusal on this, on the grounds that the last refusal points haven't been dealt with adequately enough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, to be honest, I have to agree. I mean, looking at the conditions, there is 23 that are waiting submissions for detail. Well, this is supposed to be a full planning application. Shouldn't we already have that detail? So I've got some real concerns with this, and to be honest, if I would have said quite happily seconded refusal. So if somebody's moved it or somebody, whatever.
Sorry, Chair, one thing that I forgot. And it seems to be a bone of contention with me on a regular basis. The 106 on the digital bus stop and I think there were metro cards. I find it almost incredulous that we keep getting these contributions put down on the 106s where it's becoming an in-joke that there's no bus route there, you know, no adequate bus route there. West Yorkshire Combined Authorities must think it must be one of their regular silent laughs as far as, well, we'll have a contribution even though there is no bus route in that area. I think we have one, is it a maximum of 2 buses a day, and just one. So I think that we need, in future planning, just to be aware that if there's no bus route, there's not much point in putting a digital bus stop there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Comments, really, and one question. But in terms of the mix of units, I don't share the concerns of the rest of the committee on that. I mean, my concern in terms of the layout of the site is that already, albeit that okay, possibly because they are detached properties, it looks extremely dense as an estate and very regular. Well, I won't say boring, but I have. But to increase the number of units there, you will only be dividing properties, or you won't be using any. There's no spare space there to be used, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't know that that's really beneficial to the estate as a whole. And certainly, today people will be expecting 3 or 4 bedroom homes, as opposed to 2 or 3 bedroom homes as they may have done 50 years ago or longer. So I don't share the same concerns. I do wonder where you could actually get another 100 units on that on this plan whatsoever, if you were to go to the full density that is suggested that this site could take. But my question actually is Victor sort of, I'm sorry to say it, Victor, you glossed over the comment from the late comment from Yorkshire Water, and I would like to hear a little bit more. I mean, I think Victor said that that was acceptable. I want to know why it's acceptable. A little bit more detail on that, because yes, it does seem a bit odd that Yorkshire Water at this late stage should turn around and say no, don't put the hedge there. So if I could just have that question answered, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just to clarify, this was an earlier objection about the planting proposed above their sewer easement standoff. In an attempt to address that concern, the applicants just yesterday submitted that amended landscape plan that no longer showed the replanted hedgerow in the southwest corner of the site. Obviously, because that only came in yesterday, we haven't yet heard from Yorkshire Water as to whether or not they're happy with that. But my understanding is that was the concern that Yorkshire Water had, the planting above their easement, and therefore by removing the hedgerow from that part of the site, that has addressed the concern. But as I say, we haven't heard from Yorkshire Water yet.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as this application was refused when it was 267 dwelling, because we thought that time there's not a very good mixture of houses. There are no affordable houses, some small houses. So it was refused on the application. Applicant has come back. I believe he done what he could have done. Yeah, we achieved something. We got a very good Section 106 contribution, especially on the traffic management. Yeah, we got 145,000. Yeah, plus the travel charge 10,000 plus 15,000 travel plan and the Metro card as well. Some members have mentioned about there is only one bus every hour. Sorry? Yeah, okay, yeah. The bus company don't run buses where there is no demand. Yeah. So if there is 200-300 houses, the bus company will consider, or they put a bus there to run for the people. They don't run the buses where there's nobody live there. So I don't know, Chair, by refusing this application we will achieve any more. I think if members have some concern about some issues on this one regarding still detached houses and affordable houses, if they think we can achieve and why defer this application, I think we might go that way, but I don't think we can achieve anything by refusing this application. If we refuse this application, because applicant has already done what he could done, if we refuse today, we might, applicant go to appeal, we might lose on appeal a bill cost to this council a million, yeah? So please think about this one. I think the only thing is either we delegate power to the officer by proposing some conditions here, or we go for defer it as some members have raised. Thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Can I put a reasonable compromise to Councillor Sokol? I think we should defer this. The reasons I have suggested that I've mentioned. One is just to make sure that we are satisfied with the house type. Councillor Patterson makes the point that she didn't want to use the word boring, but made the point that the layout could be better. Just to introduce another point on that, I'm still not absolutely sure that having the possibility that you can drive from one end of the development to the other is necessarily a good idea. Maybe there should be two cul-de-sacs in effect, so that you can, even if it's difficult, you can still do it, and that would create its own rat run. The other point, as already been mentioned, is in relation to the easement, which we have not had sufficient ability to discern whether that's going to work by putting the hedgerow somewhere else. I'm not quite sure where, but that's something we need to look at. And I would also argue that if we are going to defer it, could we please have the full text of all the conditions, because there is the big disadvantage to having conditions like this is, yes, it saves a bit of paper, but no, it doesn't give you all the details of what the condition actually says. And as Councillor Bellamy has pointed out, there are, I can't remember what figure 23, thank you, conditions which require the submission of details. Why can't we have them, please? I don't like conditions like that because it leaves too much to chance, it seems to me. I would like that if we do agree to bring it back. So I'm proposing. Well, if I'm not quite sure whether Councillor Greaves
I was going to just clarify, because
yes.
Did you actually formally move? I didn't think you moved, so nothing's on the table at the moment.
Right. Well, I will move deferral then for the reasons that I and he actually mentioned, and the point that I made about the text of the conditions.
Okay. So basically, I think you've moved deferment, and I think Councillor Greaves, you've seconded it.
Deborah, I think you've been waving.
Thank you, Chair.
I've been listening to the debate and first raised my hand because I thought we were at the point of voting on a refusal, and I wanted to clarify the proposed reasons for refusal. It now looks as though we are at the point of perhaps seeking clarification on the reasons for a deferral, and I have written down that a deferral is sought on the basis of the issue with the hedgerow, the layout, the housing mix, submission of further details or information, and availability of the text of the conditions. So that's what I have written down for a deferral vote if and when we get to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Deborah. Charles.
Chair, I would add to that the issue around when Hunsworth Road access is commissioned, which should be up front. There's another condition that then says, so our conditions are a bit unclear on this, because it says it should, in the construction plan, it should be a construction route, but then it says, I'll read it just so that everybody's clear on this one. In the update on page 2, as per paragraph 1066 of the committee report, an additional condition is recommended limiting the number of dwellings that may be occupied until the Hunsworth Lane access is rendered usable by residents of the proposed development. So there seems to be a conflict between having a road that's accessible for construction, which would be day one, and then a road that does not need to be brought up for use until 50 households are currently living on it, which would probably be 12 to 18 months after. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Just on the potential reasons for deferral, on the hedgerow issue, I think perhaps there's two main elements to what needs to be clarified. One is where the applicants would relocate the 85-metre stretch of hedgerow that was deleted yesterday, and secondly, whether Yorkshire Water are now happy with the amended landscape proposals. On the layout, references to I use the word monotony of the layout to be polite. Officers, I think we could probably do with more of a steer from members on what you'd like to see changed in relation to layout. Unit size mix, I'll take it that the concern is that there are still, well, members have said that there's still too many detached and 4-bedroom houses, and officers can seek an improvement on that front. On the grounds of outstanding information, I understand that was in relation to the number of conditions requiring further submissions, and officers can seek further submissions from the applicants to reduce the volume of information that would otherwise be submitted at a condition stage. Full text of conditions, yes, they can be drafted and brought to committee for members to consider. And the timing of the Hunsworth Lane access, just to clarify, the two conditions that are recommended, one is to ensure that a construction access is provided at Hunsworth Lane right from the start, although I did mention in the committee update that some use of streets to the north might be necessary at the start initially, just so that the developers can bring their plant onto the site and then work from within the site to create that Hunsworth Lane access point. But then the other condition regarding residence use, that just allows, or was recommended to allow some houses to become occupied at the north end of the site and accessed via Kilroy Drive, just in an interim period until residents are able to use the Hunsworth Lane entrance when more of the development further to the south is constructed. It's just helpful to a developer to be able to get a number of units away and occupied to help with the financing of later phases of the development. If that is a concern of members, members obviously don't need to approve that condition, but that's the reason for that recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Paul.
Paul, are you wanting to comment, Paul Farndown?
Yes, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Right, okay. It's just in response to Councillor Andrew Pinnock, who correctly mentioned that the national planning framework is about not making flood risk worse. What it can't do, this development, is solve people's existing problems, and have every sympathy and empathy for that. But in terms of how we go about assessing the runoff from the site now as a greenfield site, we have to try and mimic what a greenfield site does. But the way that this site is configured has resulted in that we don't mimic it, we actually get a betterment. So what you've got is a 20 hectare site, roughly, I believe. And we're using a very simple equation for a broad figure of 5 litres per second, but it's split between 2 outfalls, so not all the water will go to Nanhall Beck. I appreciate that some of the land will remain landscaped, and we definitely don't double count that figure. But if you look at the actual discharges, we're on 21 litres per second overall. So it's going to be, well, downwards of a third, but it's certainly going to be a significant betterment. What we do tend to get comments on is that a kind of misunderstanding that if you're going to concrete a site, that you're going to create a significant increase in runoff. And the attenuation tanks, I heard the phrase untried methods. They have been around for a very long time. You know, they are listed in various construction research manuals, and the flow control devices are certificated by the British Board of Agreement, so they're independently tested, if that reassures people. So there's going to be less going down. So in terms of any assessment of the culvert further down, it's just a very simple test. Have they made it worse? And it's clear that they haven't. I could go into in more detail about who's responsible for culverts, because there's been some inaccuracies mentioned here, but realistically we're talking about acts of Parliament that are outside the planning process and obligations, so I don't think it's appropriate to comment on those now.
Is it Adam? Did you want to come in?
Yes, Adam Darwin, Highway Development Management. Just in terms of the Hunsworth Lane site access, just say it has been designed in full accordance with design standards. But in terms of junction visibility, adequate visibility is available in line with the speed limit, but also in line with the speed survey data that was undertaken, so longer splays can be achieved, because speeds that have been recorded have been slightly above the 30 mile an hour limit, but adequate spares are available. As part of the detailed design of the access, a road safety audit will be undertaken, so if that required any additional lining and signing improvements, those would be incorporated at that time. So yeah, just to confirm, a fully compliant access can be achieved onto Hunsworth Lane. And just in terms of the bus services, yeah, I acknowledge that there is only a limited service on Hunsworth Lane. There is actually an hourly daytime service to Brighouse on Hunsworth Lane, but there's also there's a very high frequency service on Bradford Road, which is about 450 metre walk from the site. That provides 4 bus services per hour going to Bradford, Dewsbury and Wakefield. So just to clarify that.
I think, as members know, it is a site that's allocated for housing in the local plan, so the inspector considered the allocation to be sound. The previous application was refused on 2 matters, housing mix and the translocation of the hedgerow, and I think the latter point we've explained how that can be achieved. It is worth remembering that the scheme would deliver 287 dwellings and 57 affordable homes, which would make a meaningful contribution to the district's housing land supply, and we consider as officers that that should be given significant weight in the decision-making process. I think members' concerns about housing mix and density are noted, but as we set out in the report, it is not dissimilar to other schemes that have been approved by this committee or been considered by this committee. And I think finally, as Councillor Sokol has highlighted, this scheme would deliver a package of benefits in the region of £2 million, which will mitigate the impacts of the proposal, including in relation to highways, education and sustainable travel. Thank you, Chair.
Just to come back on the point that I made earlier about the monotony of the design. I mean, I haven't got any suggestions as to how the layout could be made better. In fact, I don't think it can be particularly. My concern was about why I said about the monotony, was that all that the developer would be able to do to increase the mix would be to squash up the existing houses, which I didn't feel, since it feels very squashed up anyway, I didn't feel that was particularly helpful. I mean, I do take note of what Kate has just said and what Mohan had said earlier, and to be honest, I certainly can't refuse, I will not be voting to refuse this application, and I also cannot see really how deferral will improve the offer that we've actually got. So unless you want me to complicate it by putting another, I could actually say that I would like to recommend that we accept this proposal. I don't know if that complicates the matter at the moment or not.
We've got the motion to defer, so we'll probably vote on deferment, see how that goes, and then we'll see.
That's what I thought.
Right. I think we need to take a vote one way or the other. So it is for deferment at the moment, condition details, hedgerow, mix, layout, text of conditions, Hunsworth Road, access.
Go around.
Yep.
Okay. So, for deferment, if I could start please in with Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Pinnett.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
Against.
Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
So that's 6 for, 1 against, so deferment has been passed. Members, we're just going to take a very short break whilst we just get some attendees for the next item in, so just a short couple of minutes break.
Right, welcome back everybody. Right, next page, page 51. We had a site visit there this morning, Greenhead College in Huddersfield. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Good day, members. My name is Nick Hurst, case officer for this application. This site is the sixth form college, Greenhead College. The college currently has approximately 2,800 students. Please note that the main report erroneously states the number to be 2,600. This was due to an error in the applicant's submission, as noted in the update. So, this application seeks several things around the site, so I will run through them. Demolition of the site's Langsplan blocks, which is a historic method of construction from the 60s and 70s, and demolition of the remainder of the science block. Demolition of the existing changing pavilions and reconfiguration of the sports pitch. The erection of a new 4-storey building and a courtyard infill building to replace the Langsplan block. Relocating the car parking and a revised site access arrangement, and site-wide landscaping associated with the above. Of note, the site is within the New North Road Greenhead Park Conservation Area. The site is also adjacent to the Grade 2 listed Greenhead Park. There are several listed buildings around the site, but none within Greenhead College itself. Members may recall that the pre-application for this development was presented to the committee in March 2020. So this aerial image is a 3D aerial image of the site and shows the extent of demolition. So this plan here shows the structures to be demolished. So it includes the core structures here and the pavilion to the side. I will also point out the location of the of the sports pitch here and the car park here. This image shows the proposed works. I will provide an overview before detailing each aspect of the works. In the centre here is the new courtyard infill extension, which will replace the demolished Langspan structure. Over the existing car park here, the new education building will be erected. Over to the left, the existing sports pitch will be reconfigured into a smaller sports pitch and the replacement car parking. And to the right, I will just point out a new access to be formed onto Park Avenue. While not shown, there is going to be landscaping and planting works around the site. Notably, this includes this circular area here with trees around it. This is to be a breakout or social space flexible area for the college and students. I will point out there was unfortunately one other error in the report. It was noted that there would be 2,560 whips, which are a type of young tree to be planted. This was a mistaken calculation. The correct number is approximately 240 to infill gaps in the planting around the site. The current image shows the infill extension, so that which will place the Langsplan block in the middle of the site. It would function as a reconnection point for the college's several buildings. Internally, it will predominantly offer dining space, social space and circulation room. Located in the centre of the site and being modest in scale, it will not impact on adjacent residents, and officers consider the design to be attractive and to have a neutral impact on the conservation area. Progressing to the new block, this image shows the elevations of it. The building would be 4 storeys and would provide specialist classrooms and laboratories, social and dining facilities, study space and admin facilities. As detailed within the report, throughout the pre-application process, extensive discussions took place regarding the design, location and massing of the building, given the site's sensitive character. This location has been concluded to be the most appropriate and manages to minimise the harm upon the adjacent Greenhead Park, which is Grade 2 listed, the wider conservation area and trees on the site. The size of the building is also dictated by the needs of the college. This 3D image is taken from the pre-application, so is not part of the current application, but is just to show you how the scheme has developed. At the pre-application, members did express some concerns over the quality and the standard of the design. So what we have now is the current proposal. The applicant has undertaken a design review and worked hard to enhance the appearance of the structure. The fenestration, its treatment, and the use of different materials adds interest and depth to the elevation. The proposed building and the previously mentioned link extension would be faced in buff brick in an area mostly characterised by stone. However, the use of buff brick, which would have a colour close to stone, is not opposed in principle. However, a condition would be imposed requiring samples, or is recommended to be imposed, requiring samples to be provided to ensure correct detailing. Please note that brick is not the only material, and ashes stone is to be used as a secondary material. You can see examples along there, and also horizontally. This helps to ground the building into the surrounding environment, and the stone's location by the entrance here will help be a detailed focal point. The new building requires a relocation of the car parking. The site's existing sports pitch is to be replaced by the car parking and the smaller pitch. As the site is allocated as urban green space, the proposal is therefore a departure from the local plan due to resulting in a reduction in pitch size. However, the site's existing pitch has no community use, being limited to students only. The applicant has offered the new pitch to have a community element to it. This is welcomed, and along with the new pitch being built to improved modern standards, is deemed to outweigh the harm through the smaller size. For the avoidance of doubt, the new pitch is still an acceptable size from the Sport England guidance, and the existing pitch is oversized. For the hours of use of the pitch, a balance has been sought between a viable community use and not impacting upon the amenity of neighbouring residents. This has been agreed between officers and the applicant as 8:30 AM to 8:30 PM Monday till Friday, and on the weekends 9 AM to 1 PM. These hours of use, alongside noise mitigation measures recommended to be secured by conditions, would result in a community use that does not cause harmful noise impacts to neighbouring residents. In terms of parking, the site currently has 157 parking spaces. The proposal includes a one-to-one replacement, resulting in 157 parking spaces being retained. As previously mentioned, Greenhead College has 2,800 students at present, and there is also 185 full-time equivalent staff. As a result of the works, the proposal will result in a net increase of 2,266 square metres of floor space for the college. However, despite this floor space increase, the development is not to enable an increase in student numbers, which will be retained at 2,800 maximum. The purpose of this development is to improve students' social and dining facilities and provide high specification classrooms to modern standards. Students are not currently permitted to park on site, nor would they be post-development. Considering the above, despite the increase in floor space, officers are satisfied with the level of parking. This is subject to a condition which limits maximum student and staff numbers. The new car park will be accessed through an existing access, which will be improved to an acceptable standard, as it's currently simply a gateway. A new access is to be formed onto Park Avenue. This is to provide necessary servicing arrangements and access to a small number of the parking spaces. Notably, this and the other works proposed around the site will require the removal of approximately 14 trees and sections of tree groups. It will, in addition, include the removal of the 3 council trees which are on the street, just here. The application is supported by a landscape scheme and appropriate horticultural assessment. The tree loss on site is necessary to facilitate development and would be offset through on-site planting. For the council-owned trees, the applicant has been in discussions with the council's forestry department and agreed a fee of $20,000 for their removal. This is expected to be spent on new tree planting in the area. It should be noted that this is a private agreement between the council and applicant. It is not part of the planning application. The report before members outlines officers' full assessment of the proposal. Furthermore, I've given an overview as I've gone along. In summary, despite being a departure from the local plan's urban green space policy, the scheme represents a net enhancement to local sport provision through including a community use. Furthermore, the development would enhance education provision for the area. Therefore, the principle is acceptable. In terms of the design, the proposal is deemed attractive and suitable for the area. However, the site is within the New North Road and Greenhead Park conservation area. A modern intervention of this site is considered harmful to the character of the conservation area. However, the proposal's good design has kept this harm to a minimum, and the harm is considered less than substantial. The previously mentioned benefits of the proposal to sporting and education in the area are deemed to clearly outweigh the harm identified. The proposal would neither harm the amenity of neighbouring residents nor the safe and effective operation of the highway. In terms of other material considerations, such as ecology and drainage, these were assessed within the report and found to be acceptable. One public representation has been received and has been addressed in the report. Therefore, officers recommend approval, subject to the recommended conditions, with nothing further to add, Chair.
Not just shake kettles. Right, first speaker is Simon Lake.
Simon, if you just unmute your mic.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name is Simon Lett. I'm Principal of Greenhead College. Last week, the Sunday Times released their 29th edition of the Parent Power Schools Guide, ranking Greenhead College as the 10th best among all state-funded sixth form colleges in the UK and the highest ranked sixth form college in the north of England. Tellingly, Greenhead was the only northern college to make the top 10, and only as recently as today, the Daily Telegraph published a list showing Greenhead College as the 15th best performing provider in the country for getting young people into Oxford and Cambridge universities. Again, we're the only provider in the north in the top 15. Put simply, Greenhead is a jewel in the crown in education in Huddersfield, in Kirklees, in the north of England and in the country. The problem is that our excellent standards aren't currently matched by adequate enough accommodation. The college has Langspan building parks, which is a type of building used to construct schools and colleges after the war, and they're reaching the end of their shelf life. Most of our science provision is currently taught in this type of building. Science provision accounts for 45% of the college's curriculum offer, and when I tell you that on average science accounts for only 29% of provision in most sixth form colleges, you can begin to understand how crucial science subjects are to Greenhead College and how much our students value the ability to undertake science at A-level with us. In some respects, that's no surprise. At national level, science has been given much greater prominence in the national curriculum in recent years. But at local level, science plays a huge role in the Kirklees economy. Continuation of our science curriculum offer in adequate facilities is therefore crucial to ensure young people are able to obtain and develop skills essential to their future career and life chances. We're thrilled to have been announced by the Department for Education as one of the first 50 schools and colleges in the country to be part of its schools rebuilding programme, which seeks to carry out major refurbishment of schools and colleges prioritised by urgency. And in our view, this redevelopment is long overdue and very urgently needed. For over a year, we've been working closely with the DfE and Galliford Try, and I believe the positioning of the proposed redevelopment aligns with the local area, and moreover, the design is also concomitant with the heritage of Greenhead. It's important for me to stress that this redevelopment is not designed to allow us to expand the curriculum or student numbers in college in future years. It's simply designed to allow us to replicate like-for-like provision, but in our accommodation and resources that are fit for purpose. The risk of not being able to...
You wrap up, please, Simon. That's 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Next, we've got Grant Sellers.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Yeah, I'm Grant Sellers. I'm one of the architects working on the project, and I'm really representing the design team and looking to build on what Simon has just told you all. I would sort of echo all the elements within the officer's report, but fundamentally, we've really tried to carefully consider the comments from the last meeting that we had with the committee, and we've had substantial further dialogue with officers. The project is being delivered through the Department for Education School Replacement Programme, and this is aimed purely at replacing schools, which Simon touched upon. A big part of our role within that is really trying to create a balance between the multitude of needs. The site constraints play a huge part in that, and we've really looked to minimise the impact on the local heritage assets, the established green infrastructure, and really deliver a scheme that sits comfortably within the context and is respectful to the surroundings. But fundamental to the design is also providing modern education facilities that support the delivery of outstanding teaching and learning. And we've been working, we also have to work within very strict funding provisions that are provided by the Department for Education. Also within the thinking of developing the design, it's really important that we minimise the impact on the operational college, which will remain active throughout the construction phase. So that is an incredibly important driver for us. The funding that's been provided is reliant on us meeting some national design standards that have been developed by the Department for Education for schools and sixth form colleges, and these set out really clear performance and space requirements, and they're based on years of research and review of good practice across the UK. And they're really positive. They're aimed at creating great spaces for teaching and learning and reducing the environmental impact. And I just really want to set out some of those key criteria for you, just so you're aware that these are what have informed the design proposals. They set very clear requirements in terms of the size, proportion and overall height of spaces that are created, and also the adjacencies, so how those spaces are arranged to allow operational efficiency, but also ensure that users feel safe and secure within that environment. A real focus of these standards are on internal environment, and they're around creating a good environment for students to help them focus and learn. They look to minimise overheating, consider global warming pathways and how they may change, thermal comfort so that students don't get drafts or chills, but are able to maintain good levels of air quality to enhance concentration within those environments. And they're also provided with good levels of natural daylight and views out, but whilst mitigating glare and the issues that can cause. And they also consider the acoustic treatment to make sure that those spaces are sound, the reverberations addressed, and also that they're not disturbed from adjacent spaces. Sustainability also plays a key part of those Department for Education requirements. The scheme is looking to be net zero carbon in operation, which means it's going to be a low energy development. It's got high levels of insulation, high levels of high performance windows, good levels of air tightness, and heat recovery systems. And there's no fossil fuel burning heating systems within the development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, that's 3 minutes. Next, we've got John Blake on Teams.
John, you just need to unmute your mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Just briefly, I would like to echo what Simon, the principal, has said. This is a great opportunity for the college to replace some very outdated buildings from the early 1960s. This will enable the science subjects that we rely on greatly for our students to be taken away from classrooms and outdated labs and put in state-of-the-art buildings. We already get very good results, as Simon said, and I think this will improve facilities and it will improve resources for both teachers and students. We're very much looking forward to having this development take place, and I would just echo what Simon says. We think it's for the best for the college and for the town of Huddersfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, it's over to you, Carol.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm really pleased to see this this application in the end. I think it's a really good example of how planning applications, planning officers and the members of this committee can work really well together to bring about a very decent development in an area, in particular in this case in what is a conservation area and opposite Greenhead Park. I mean, there's been all sorts of issues with the site for many years. It's been quite a jumble of different designs, and it's been added to ad hocly, and I think this whole development actually brings the whole site a lot better together with the sunken area facing onto the Greenhead Park as well. I think that's really good. What I'm most pleased to see, because I mean the other issues are sort of within the community and not necessarily subject to planning, but I'm really pleased to see that there is no increase, and it's put in, we've got a condition on that, there's no increase in the number of students, and there is no decrease, because the original application did have a decrease in the number of parking spaces so on site. So that is really good, because one of the really big issues in the community locally, is parking. Well, it was before the pandemic. I have to say it's a lot different at the moment. But also the students just spilling out of the site to at lunchtime or when they're going home, just meandering around on the streets. I mean, a hazard to themselves, let alone any other traffic or pedestrians even in the area. So the fact that the existing two entrances to the site are to be blocked up and two different entrances, I mean, that are to be created. I mean, that is so much better than what we got at the moment. So, and my other concern earlier on was about the statue, which I know that that is still there and is still preserved. So I'm really pleased to see that all in all, that everyone has worked really well together to come to a really good proposal here. And I'm quite happy to move the recommendations of the officers.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the improvement of facility at Greenhead College. Actually, Greenhead College, by its achievement, has put our Huddersfield town on the national map by making so much achievement. Yeah, it's above the national achievement rate. However, I still have some concern. I know on the pre-planning application, I think some member, including myself, we raised the issue of the material. We should use natural stones because matching with the surrounding area buildings. But I know still they haven't come back with the natural stone, but as you say, the design is much better than, and they say it will cost them another half million if they use natural stone. However, I still have to agree with this new design. But again, on the new access, I know my colleague Carol is comfortable with the new access on the Park Avenue, but I still feel it might be more less safe than our current access to the college on Greenhead Road. But I don't know. We will see if it's a better sight line and better signing over there on the Park Avenue about this access. But however, I'm happy to move the officer recommendation to accept. Oh, second, sorry. Yeah, second.
Thanks, Chair. There's two areas I'd like to pick up on. One's in respect of the urban green space. So, to my mind, we really do have a bit of an issue in terms of how our current policy operates. And I raised this at the last meeting with officers, and I understand they're looking at it in the background. And I would comment this. Nearly all our education sites are going to be washed over as urban green space. The current policy needs to be more flexible, and it needs to accommodate where the purpose will be maintained or where the change is ancillary or complementary to that purpose. And we need to get there sooner rather than later, because we need to make sure that we're not opening the door for people to effectively use some of the gaps that we're opening up for purposes that don't maintain the original reason. So I'm happy to see this proposal go through, but I think it's really important that planning policy review those urban green space rules and when it's appropriate to make a change. I think perhaps this might fall under the C exemption, but there is a bit about the hours of use that I'd like to clarify. So the applicant was looking at 6 p.m. Environmental health, on a weekend. The applicant was looking at use up to 6 p.m. Environmental health have indicated 1 p.m. and I think perhaps maybe a compromise could be struck whereby use up to, say, 3 p.m. on a weekend. That would probably mean there's no need for floodlighting. But I think if we're going to have some facilities that are open to public use,
they need to be available outside of school hours for public use. So I think just maybe just moving that balance from a 1 p.m. finish to 3 p.m. just might help with that. But I'm happy to support the recommendations. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to come back on something I've forgotten I wanted to say. I know it's not part of the planning or any planning condition, but I am really pleased to see the travel plan that's included in the application. I mean, that is sorely needed to deal with the issue of student parking. And I'm really pleased to see that there's an additional cycling spaces available on the site. So I just wanted to say I'm really pleased to see that. Thanks.
Through you, Chair, those hours were based on our experience with other sports pitches in residential areas and finding that appropriate balance. So I could invite in the officers from Environmental Health, who were the ones who kind of worked on those hours. So through you, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Rebecca Muff, Principal Technical Officer, Environmental Health. Concerning the issues of the hours of use, we have to think of this in terms of thinking of the sort of local residents, which is why we'd sort of decided that, or we'd come to the decision that at the weekends, 9 till, I think it was 1:30, was an acceptable time to give local residents sort of respite from the noise. So we had issues with noise from the multi-use games area, and we didn't want to be in a position where we were getting sort of affected, that was affecting the amenity of the local residents, and we were getting lots of complaints from that to Environmental Health, which is why we'd come up with the decision that we had. However, I understand that there's been, somebody suggested perhaps a slightly later time, and maybe that could be something that can be considered. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, we've recently passed 2 4G pitches, which one of which is right in the middle of a residential zone where we've allowed much later operating. So, with respect, I think 3 p.m. on a weekend would be fine, and I don't feel that there's an objection, a technical objection to that. So, I'd like to propose that amendment to the hours of operation to 3 p.m. on weekends.
The college is on the link, but I know that they'll be okay with that. That's fine. I'm the planning agent, so happy to speak on their behalf.
Moved, and it has been seconded, so we'll go to a vote.
So this is in line with the officer recommendation as outlined in the report. So we've got Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
For.
Councillor Pinnett.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Greaves.
Sorry, I just need to clarify. Condition 4, I was substituting 1 o'clock for 3 o'clock.
That's been included in it, yes?
Yes.
Through you, Chair, yes, including that.
4.
And Councillor Hall.
4.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Right. Next, page 87.
Just getting the officer in now. possibility.
The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Michael Watson for the reasons set out in paragraph 7.3 of the report. The site is known as Car Hill Quarry and lies close to the junction at the Sovereign Crossroads, Shapley, within an area of Greenbelt. Permission was granted in August 2000 for an extension of Car Hill Quarry for the extraction of sandstone and clay, associated ancillary activities, and its restoration by means of infill with inert wastes. The site is operated by PMW Quarries. All minerals have been exhausted at the site. The character of the landscape within the vicinity of the site is that of gently sloping managed pasture, scrub and arable fields with pockets of woodland and intermittent residential elements. The site is served by an entrance onto Barnsley Road, which also serves the garage located west of the site entrance. There is also a mobile crusher screen plant within the site. The site has been backfilled in part near to the original land levels along part of the southern boundary, which has established landscaping within the western part of the site, as you can just see in the corner there, near the Sovereign Junction. I will now run through a number of photos to give some context of the site. The photo in the top left-hand corner shows the workshop garage with the northwest part of the site. Within the northwest part of the site. The photo on the right is taken at the site entrance looking into the site, where you can see part of the southern boundary ahead showing the mature landscaping and stone boulders which were placed approximately 20 years ago as toe reinforcement to the backfilling within this part of the site. The photos at the bottom are taken looking into the eastern part of the site. This plan shows an approved restoration scheme granted under Condition 30 of the 2000 permission. The land levels on this plan are shown to be gradually sloping up from the northern boundary along Barnsley Road to the southern boundary, with the inclusion of dry stone walls and soft landscaping and the retention of an access and gate. This plan shows the approved phasing and direction of backfilling in which to complete the approved land levels shown on the previous slide. The approved phasing shows the direction of backfilling buttressing to create the approved sloping hillside. From this plan you can see the entrance and garage workshop are to be retained till completion of phase 3, then to be removed prior to commencing phase 4. The current proposals are a resubmission of a scheme that was refused on Greenbelt grounds in December 2019. Permission is now sought to vary the restoration condition number 30 of the 2000 permission for works to be carried out in accordance with these plans, which show the creation of a level area along almost the full length of the road frontage, past the gated entrance up to the site's eastern boundary. In addition, to accommodate this level area, an engineered returning structure is proposed in the location indicated by the thick black line on both plans. This slide shows the details of the proposed retaining structure within the site. At this point, it's important to run briefly through the relevant history of the site, which is detailed in paragraphs 10.1 to 10.7 of the report. So the garage workshop that I referred to earlier and shown in the photos was granted temporary permission which expired in December 2007, following which it should have been removed. Earlier this year, a certificate of lawful development was approved for the garage workshop. The granting of the lawful certificate for the garage does not address the concerns relating to the previous reason for refusal on the 2019 application, but evidences that the garage is lawful for the purpose of planning control and immune from enforcement action. The mobile screen crusher plant within the site the mobile screen crusher plant permission expires in August 2022. This is the same time as restoration works should be completed. The purpose of this process was stated to be associated with the importation of waste to backfill the existing quarry at the site, and only 20% of the waste that would be suitable for reuse to be exported. In May 2005, an application to create a level plateau area within the site along the road frontage was refused on grounds of inappropriate development in the Greenbelt and the impact on visual amenity. An appeal was lodged against the decision and dismissed in November 2005. Full details are set out in paragraph 10.5 of the report. This remains a material consideration as Greenbelt policy remains the same. Going back to the merits of the application, the applicant states that the granting of the certificate of lawful development for the garage addresses the previous reason for refusal on the 2019 application. Other arguments the applicant has put forward in support of their proposals are set out in the officer's response in paragraphs 10.21 to 10.24. However, in brief, the arguments are that the proposals would provide a stable slope above the access hard standing, would assist with future agricultural use, and the current Environment Agency permit for the site does not allow for the full infill of the quarry. Also, the proposals would facilitate better drainage and the site would be more open in comparison to the previously approved restoration scheme. Of most importance are points 1 and 2, matters relating to instability and the EA permit. This aerial photo indicates the location of the existing stone boulders, the area of instability and the photo looking in the westerly direction within the site. With respect to instability, no evidence or survey results have been provided in the submission documents that suggest there is instability within or close to the entrance to the site or the garage workshop, which has been operating without any instability issues affecting land surrounding it. The proposed engineered retaining structure is required to accommodate the proposed level area and not the site entrance or land around the garage workshop. With regards to the EA permit, the responsibility lies with the applicant to obtain a permit from the EA which coincides with the approved land levels and the planning permission. However, this plan indicates the restoration contours to be achieved under the current EA permit. Whilst this does not accord with the previously approved land levels under Condition 30, these contours are likely to be supported by officers and would ensure the topography of the restoration of the site is more in keeping with the surroundings than the submitted restoration scheme. This would also avoid the applicant needing to obtain a variation of the current EA permit. To conclude, the proposals submitted are in complete contrast to the previously approved land levels. They do not address the previous reason for refusal. The creation of a level flat plateau area along the site frontage and introduction of a harsh retaining structure would fail to preserve the openness of the Greenbelt, for which no very special circumstances exist that would be sufficiently exceptional to clearly outweigh the harm caused to the Greenbelt by virtue of inappropriate development and other recognised harm set out in the report. As such, the application is recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Fazara. We've got one speaker, and this is Chris Ballan.
Thank you, Chair. The reason for refusal contends that a small-scale engineered structure and the retention of a level field would harm visual amenity, detract from local landscape character, have an urbanising effect, encroach on the Greenbelt, fail to preserve openness and conflict with the purpose of including land in the Greenbelt. We are talking about a short length of 1 to 1.5 metre high gabion wall that can be faced with local sandstone and clad with green vegetation such as ivy, not a harsh engineering structure. It's hidden behind a dry stone wall with a gappy hawthorn hedge along the roadside, and only one end of it will just be visible through the gated site entrance. The majority of the gabion wall would not be open to public view. The western end of the quarry is occupied by a large garage, its HGV hard standing and access with security fence and gates. The garage and hard standing has behind it a retaining structure made up of large stone blocks standing up to 3 metres high. The gabion wall will be an extension of the stone block wall. The garage is permanent as the certificate of lawful use has been granted. The scheme is designed to create a level field at the foot of a steep slope so that stock can be managed. It will be an eastern extension of the level area that the garage, hard standing and access occupy. The only other level area is at the top of the 30-metre high slope. It will be difficult to manage stock ranging over such a steep slope without such a level area at the base of the slope. I would suggest that any harm to visual amenity would not be significant, and therefore there cannot be any harm to local landscape character. In terms of general Greenbelt policy, this is a restoration scheme for mineral working, which is by definition not inappropriate, providing it doesn't harm openness or conflict with the purpose of including land in the Greenbelt. Openness is more than visual openness and includes maintaining land as open, i.e. not developed. The restoration proposed will not result in development and the site will remain open, free from development. It will be a field in agricultural use. I don't see how a small field in agricultural use can be considered an urbanising feature, even if it does have a small retaining structure for stability purposes, which has a negligible impact on visual amenity and local landscape characteristics. You will not be able to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles.
I'm a little confused about what the applicant's intentions are for this site. Could we just have some clarity around what's meant by managing stock?
you put animals, sheep or cattle in the field on the slope, because it isn't designed as an agricultural field, you've got a very steep 30-metre high field with a level area at the top. If you've got any stock down at the bottom, it's very difficult to get them back up the 30-metre high slope, steep slope to the top. And we would like, my client would like to be able to come in at the bottom of the slope through the access used by the garage, so that he's got a level area, field area, so that he can manage any stock that's put on there.
Yeah, I'm happy to move officer's recommendation for refusal.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that. I mean, the site is a mess at the moment. I can't ever imagine any farmer allowing stock to wander down that steep, well, the slope is certainly not as it is at the moment, or even once it's reclaimed. I mean, it seems to me, unfortunately, we made a mistake back in 2005 or 7 in not asking for the garage to be withdrawn, and we only had temporary permission. But that whole road, that whole junction, is an area of urban, well, I'm not on green space, etc., and should be retained as such. It's a right mess at the moment, and I'm happy to second refusal.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really understand why the recommendation is refusal. I mean, all I can see is almost an area to be dedicated to loading and unloading livestock. I can't see how it would interfere with the development in Greenbelt and being inappropriate. I think it's wholly appropriate as far as farming and livestock's concerned. I can't even understand why it's, you know, reading through this and looking at the plot, I can't understand why a quarry would be then regarded as being built up sprawl in a greenbelt. It makes no sense to me, so I wouldn't be able to go with officer's recommendation on this, and I would move that this planning be passed. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, there's been comments about it being a mess up there. Well, surely this would improve it. You know, it's going to be used for agriculture. You know, I understand it. You know, if you keep livestock, you need walls. So.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to the site being a mess, it's the former quarry, and quarry operations are messy. The 2000 permission was granted for the quarry operations and for the restoration, conditioned under number 30. Now, a restoration scheme has been approved, as shown in the slides, and that restoration scheme would achieve the land levels within the site brought back to the original land levels. Whereas and that would be put to agricultural use, the gently sloping hillside, which also integrates with the surrounding topography of the land. Whereas what is now proposed is a harsh retaining structure to accommodate the level area, for which there is no purpose for really a level area. You can use a rolling hillside for agricultural purposes. It's not really required for stocking of animals, but also there is an EA permit which is a different contouring of the site. It's not in accordance with the approved restoration scheme, but it's more in keeping with the rolling hillside, and it can again accommodate for agricultural purposes. But the scheme that's put forward is creating a level platform area along the full site frontage of the road, and previously a similar scheme was refused and dismissed at appeal in 2005. Again, there's no real change in Greenbelt policy, and the reason for refusal is in further encroachment into the Greenbelt, urbanising the site with a level platform area and the retaining structure to accommodate the level area. I don't know if that answers the query.
Has been the first on the table was to accept officer's recommendation and refuse, so we'll take that vote first.
Alright, so this is a vote to refuse the planning permission as outlined in the submitted report. So if I can go first to Councillor Bellamy.
Against.
Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Pinner.
For.
Councillor Socko. Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Graves.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
So that's 5 who have voted for refusal, 2 against, so officer recommendations refused has been approved.
Right, sticking with Fazana, and we're going to Hog Close Lane in Untitled.
Now.
Members will be aware that this application was deferred at the July committee meeting in relation to 2 matters to be addressed. Before discussing these matters, I will briefly run through a number of slides to give an overview of the site and proposals again. The application relates to the site at Hog Close Lane, Hunsworth, identified within the red line on this aerial view. The site lies in an area of Greenbelt and comprises of agricultural pasture land, which includes an area of woodland, a deep void in the form of a gully, and habitat species of principal importance, such as heathland. The site is served from an existing farm track of Hog Close Lane. The proposals are to landfill the gully with construction, demolition and excavation waste, realignment of an existing access track, provision of on-site turning facilities and restoration of the site to more productive agricultural use. PMW is a landfill contractor wishing to dispose of the construction, demolition and excavation waste at this site. This slide shows existing watercourse to be diverted around the landfill with a series of perforated pipes to be laid within the landfill itself to deal with the surface water land drainage. This plan highlights the proposed biodiversity compensatory net gains, which would include on and off-site habitats comprising of approximately 0.75 hectare of an area of heathland restoration, reed bed filtration, creation of 0.14 hectare of woodland and on-site restoration of neutral grassland. The applicant is also willing to provide an additional 0.14 hectare of woodland planting as requested by members at the March committee meeting. This plan and the biodiversity metric calculation will therefore need to be updated depending on the decision. This plan shows a couple of sections taken through the site indicating the depth of the gully together with the existing and proposed land levels. This is a photo looking into the site from the access of Hog Close Lane, and this is a photo looking back into the site from Slacktop Lane from the north of the site. Go back to the block plan, please. So the two matters as to why the application was deferred at the July committee meeting was to allow for further information to be provided in respect of quantitative details relating to the amount of capacity available at each landfill site listed in the report and the benefits to the agricultural production from the proposals, to enable members to conclude on the principle of considering this site for landfilling with construction, demolition and excavation waste before safeguarded waste sites in the local plan. The table at the end of paragraph 10.17 includes an additional column with quantitative details of remaining and annual landfill capacity at each of these sites. The details for each listed quarry have also been expanded upon to give members a fuller account of the current works at each of the listed sites. The details provided by the applicant with respect to benefits to agricultural production, these are set out in paragraph 1.2 of the report. In light of the further information, officers remain of the opinion that the applicant has failed to demonstrate sufficiently with evidence that there is a proven need for additional landfill for construction, demolition and excavation waste over and above the safeguarded waste sites in the local plan. The proposals are therefore contrary to local plan policy LP 46 and recommended for refusal for the reasons set out in the agenda. There was nothing to report in the update. However, an email was received early this morning from the Environment Agency who state that the proposals are outside the scope of CLARE and as such would require an EA permit. Thank you, Chair.
Two speakers first, Chris Bellum.
Thank you, Chair. The sole reason for refusal is based on local plan policy LP 46 and the capacity situation. All other issues are satisfactory. However, I must point out that there is a fundamental flaw in your office's report, as it treats the use of waste at this site as disposal and not recovery. The use of waste on this site is not disposal, which is at the base of the waste hierarchy. It is other recovery, as it's using waste to recover land to a beneficial use. It is therefore as high up the hierarchy as it's possible to go for this type of waste. Disposal in a large landfill like Wellfield is disposal at the base of the hierarchy. Government guidance and your own LP 43 policy in the local plan is that you need to push waste treatment as far up the hierarchy as possible, and by refusing this application you will prevent this from happening. Here we are using waste to reclaim land damaged by past human activity so as to be incapable of beneficial use without treatment. The waste proposed here will be used to fill, cap off and soil an area of damaged land so that it can be used for agricultural purposes. It is a classic case of the use of waste for recovery purposes and not waste disposal. This then leads to local plan policy LP 46. Sites for disposal of waste will only be permitted where they cannot be met by treatment higher in the waste hierarchy. This is management as high up the hierarchy as it's possible to go for this type of waste. It therefore complies with policy 46, and as it is not disposal, there is no need to consider the other two criteria in the policy, including need to assess need and capacity. If you do decide you need to assess capacity, your officers have presented a report which overstates. Of the 6 sites listed in the table, only Wellfield is currently available. For example, there is no current capacity at Windy Ridge and there will not be any until the quarry is exhausted, perhaps in 10 years' time. If nothing else, the fact that my client is running waste to Goole instead of Cross and Moor illustrates a monopoly position held by Wellfield. If you refuse this application, you will be perpetuating a monopoly, pushing waste down the waste hierarchy, and because of the increased distance travelled by waste, increasing the use of fossil fuels and assisting in global warming. Thank you.
Councillor Donald Firth.
Right. I don't come to you on the telephone, I come to you on the microphone, to be honest.
Donald, we can't hear you. Councillor Firth, I think you're on mute. Councillor Firth, you just need to unmute your mic.
I've unmuted it now. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're fine, Councillor Firth. You can carry on, yes.
Yeah, okay. I've been studying this plan for Close Lane has been in the pipeline, I believe, for about 5 years. Now, my slant in all this is I don't understand why it keeps getting refused. I can't see anything particularly wrong with it. What this gentleman is wanting to do is to fill in a gully with some waste material, and really when you look at it, the waste material is not classed as disposal, it is classed as recovery. Under local plan policy L46, which looks at the bottom end of the scale, I've scaled it from 1 to 10, the bottom end of the scale, it will be classed as disposal. And so that will be a low grade waste. This isn't low grade waste, and it's going to be beneficial in use, and to my way of thinking, it's fairly high up the scale as possible to go. The disposal in a large landfill in Wellfield is disposal at the base of the scale. Now, guidance is that we need to push, or the government says you should need to push up the waste treatment as far up the scale as possible, and by refusing this application it will prevent it from happening, because local plan policy 43 will come in as it goes up the scale, and the council is also seeking to move the management of waste streams up the hierarchy rather than down, which would mean there wouldn't be a problem on passing this particular plan. Also, Close Lane is management as high up it should be managed as high up the scale as possible to go for this type of waste. It complies with LP46 and it is not disposal. There is no need to consider the other two criteria, obviously, in the policy, because there's no need to assess the need and the capacity, which is common sense, that. Although I sometimes wonder where common sense goes sometimes with some of these the things that we come up with. Close Lane is high up the scale. It complies with LP46. It is not for disposal. It is for reusage. And the criteria there has been to assess capacity. Close will be transformed into top quality agricultural land to make use of the extra land it's going to create for both sheep and other farm animals. And there will also be some tree planting. I don't see a problem. I'm sure you've all been up to Close Lane. It isn't exactly in the middle of Huddersfield. There's not all that many people around, and it would be sorted out and should have been sorted out years ago. So I would like the committee to just sit down and just think about this, because as far as I'm concerned, it needs disposing of and giving it giving it the go-ahead after 5 years of messing about. Thank you very much. I'm glad you've all been listening. Thank you.
Thanks, Donald. Gone home. Yeah, another meeting, yeah. Right, members, Councillor Pinnock.
Thank you, Chair. One simple question, because we have seen this before, and I'm not sure I got a straight answer then. Is there any Ministry of Agriculture assessment available to show that it is necessary or advantageous or whatever to actually infill this gully? Because there must be gullies all over the place on various bits of land which could be infilled. What is so special about this one that it requires to be infilled with inert waste, which will presumably allow grass to regrow on it and therefore be used beneficially for agriculture? But why this particular gully? There may not be any.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the earlier point, the waste not being treated higher up the waste hierarchy, it is agreed that the waste that is to be deposited is as far as possible high up within the waste hierarchy it can be. It's the remnants of recycled construction demolition waste. It's not the recycled elements, it's the remnants of it, so it has to go somewhere, and it is disposal. It's not, as Chris Bellum, the agent, says, in my understanding, it's not recycled waste. The recycled waste is going elsewhere. This is the remnants of the construction demolition recycled waste. So it is agreed that the proposed use needs to be treated higher up the waste hierarchy, and doing that, it only remains for it to be disposed of.
Sorry, Chair, that wasn't the question I was asking. I was asking why this particular gully. I know the answer to that may be because somebody has applied for it. But why should this gully be given special treatment as opposed to other gullies? Sorry, we're getting into philosophy here. But
Chair, can I come back on that? Yeah, I think we have nothing before us that says you have to operate agriculture on a flat piece of land. I think if you look around the country, there's plenty of examples of agriculture operating on slopes. So I think we have put in the report in terms of the justification for agriculture, but in terms of levels, I'm not aware of anything that says it has to be a certain profile. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Chair. To be honest, I haven't got a problem with this. I mean, it's filling a gully, making the land usable again for livestock, etc. I've got a problem with wagons travelling to Goole. I think that's a bit of an issue with, to dispose of whatever, clean waste, whatever waste was sort of classing it as, it seems like it's just filling up a gully to make the land better. So like I say, I haven't particularly got a problem with this. And as said, there's going to be some tree planting and then the land will be used for agriculture. So to be honest, I'm happy to accept this and I'll move it on that basis.
Thanks, Chair. When we looked at this last, the issue was around available capacity for landfilling, and we asked for officers to undertake an assessment of that and for the applicant to produce evidence to support their claims. And the officers have done that, and they've identified that there's lots of places this could go, and the applicant hasn't. The applicant appears to have changed tack slightly. One of the sites, ironically, that is available is Carhill Quarry, the one that we've just dealt with. So officers indicate there's space there for 20,000 tonnes, which, if it's now going to be sloped rather than capped off level, will meet that concern. I have farming on four corners of my family. I can't think of any of the land we've had that would be described as flat, because we've farmed in the Home Valley, which is where this site is. And we've managed for 400 years to farm our livestock on inclined slopes. My great-great-grandparents farmed home moss and managed to do it without too much trouble. I think the arguments for this scheme just don't exist, and I'm happy to move with the officer's recommendation for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm inclined to go along with Councillor Greaves. That this is obviously the third time this has come to committee, and I do feel that we ought to make a decision one way or the other. I still have, despite what it says in the paragraph that Councillor Bellaby pointed out to me, I'm still not quite clear why they have to do it. It's in a relatively exposed location from my memory, because I went and looked at the site the first time it came to committee, and it struck me then that as I say, the location is really quite exposed, and there is the issue that again Councillor Bellamy mentions of large vehicles getting access to the site on an exposed hillside, where they would probably, although I'm not sure about this, have to get into areas which might be a bit dodgy in terms of slopes and so on. As I say, I'm prepared to second Councillor Greaves' proposal. If the applicants want to appeal the decision, then that because as I say, this is the third time we've had it, we clearly can't easily come to a decision. I think we ought to make a decision, and what was I going to say? Take the consequences. That's perhaps a wrong way of looking at it, but you know, make a decision, as I say.
Okay. Right, so as Councillor Hall has said, so this is the vote to refuse as outlined in the submitted report. So Councillor Bellamy?
Against.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor Greaves?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
So that's 5 for refusal, one against, so the officer recommendation to refuse has been approved.
Next, page 127. Swap round here. Yeah, keep it going.
It's muted itself. Hello?
Right, everybody, we're going to Crossland Road at Linley. This is the Max trucks that we went to this morning. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Richard Gilbert. I'm a recent addition to the Planning Department and I sit within the Majors and Minerals Planning team at the Council. The site is situated on Lindley Moor Road to the south of the M62 between junctions 23 and 24 of the motorway. The site is allocated as a constituent part of mixed-use Site 3, being approximately 3.2 hectares of the overall 32-hectare allocation outlined in red on the slide. The applicant is Max Trucks, who specialise in vehicle sales, repair and importantly bespoke manufacture of heavy goods vehicles within the borough. Max currently employ 49 full-time staff members and, subject to approval of this application, have an intent to increase staff numbers by 15 full-time equivalent employees, which equates to a 30% increase in employment and is inclusive of the creation of a further 2 highly skilled technicians. Max Trucks also currently provide 3 apprenticeships and have an ambition to move into the electric HGV market. Members may recall that the development was originally approved for an outline permission in 2014 that agreed the principle of development as well as the means of access and landscaping matters across the western section of the mixed-use allocation. The outline permission allowed for a total of 15,000 square metres for 2 B-use units on Plot A to the west of the Max site that are currently occupied by Jaguar Land Rover and Les Jofers, respectively, on the triangular parcel of land composing the Max site itself, known under the outline application as Plot B. A 4,600 square metre industrial unit was also included under the 2014 outline application. Further southwest of the Max site, on the parcel forming Plot C, another 252 dwelling houses were approved at outline under the same application. 2 years later, in 2016, a Reserved Matters application was received covering plots A, B and C within the mixed-use site. Focusing on Plot B, the Max Truck site, the size of the building was revised down significantly from 4,600 square metres to just over 1,700 square metres. The Reserved Matters application largely provided more detail on the design and layout of the B2 industrial unit on Plot B, including confirmation of grey and silver cladding as the building's finishing materials, as evidenced on the photos above. A service yard area across the western side of the site between the proposed building location and the newly upgraded public right-of-way that separates Plot B from Plots A and C. In general, the proposed development that came forward in 2016 as a part of the Reserved Matters application was significantly within the parameters approved by members under the outline application in 2014. For example, the maximum height permitted at the outline stage was 12 metres in 2014, whereas the total height of the building as submitted in 2016 was 9 metres. This is 3 metres lower than the scheme parameters approved 2 years prior. Again, and as previously mentioned, the building itself was also less than half the size of what was originally proposed, being 1,700 square metres in footprint as opposed to 4,600 square metres, with the knock-on benefits to landscape character and appearance of the area that a smaller unit entails. This is important in the context of this application, given that the applicant seeks to make their building larger. In any case, and as members bore witness to this morning during the site visit, the permission given in 2016 has since been built out largely in accordance with the approved plans, subject to preparatory works that apply to the development proposal being put in front of members today. Notably, this relates to some earth movements, and officers have been informed by the agent that some of the extent of the southern parking area is being utilised by displaced vehicles due to temporary buildings being on the site on account of the company's expansion. This is to be regularised under this application. The proposed development constitutes an extension to the building that includes the formation of 6 further garage bays extending from the northern elevation towards Lindley Moor Road, as indicated by the red line struck across the top third of the building footprint on the site plan above. The area shaded in grey represents the 5,400 square metre hard standing to be built surrounding the extension across the northern part of the site. This is to enable HGV manoeuvring and parking. The southern part of the site is also subject to the creation of approximately 1,000 square metres of car parking space, also shaded in grey on the plan that I previously mentioned. This will extend to the south of the site's main junction with Crossland Road. Apologies if it is difficult to make out, however, the orange line on the plan within the red line boundary represents the new location of the green V-mesh security fencing surrounding the site, which reflects the expanded size of the hard standings. A temporary construction access is to be sited at the northern end of Crossland Road, adjacent to the northeastern part of the building. The temporary access is to be subject to a condition requiring that its construction is observed by an archaeologist, which was requested by the West Yorkshire Archaeology Service. The same applies for the new embankment across the northern part of the site. Similarly, Highways Development Management colleagues have confirmed that they are content with the gradients and design of the temporary access. In terms of residential amenity, the red arrows on the plan identify the nearest dwellings to the development, and the green arrows present the separation distances quoted in the officer report. The southern car park extension is, on average, 21 metres from the rear boundaries belonging to the residential properties on Anvil Court. These are identified by the row of short green arrows on the bottom left hand of the plan. The green arrow at the bottom of the slide presents the 24-metre separation distance between the principal elevation of 12 Hague Close, which is the nearest dwelling relative to the eastern edge of the car park extension. The car park is separated from 12 Hague Close by the highway of Crossland Road. The curtilage of 34 Anvil Court is approximately 124 metres away from the extension to the main building, with the new hard-standing located even further away to the north. This is the largest green arrow in the middle of the slide. Middle left of the slide, sorry. The proximity of the eastern hard standing to this nearest residential property, 1 Hague Way, is approximately 65 metres. This is evidenced by the green arrow on the middle right-hand side of the plan. A similar distance is experienced by the bungalow further north on the opposite side of Lindley Moor Road, which is not included on the plan. As is evident on the slide, the majority of the development is predominantly located across the site's northern aspect, significantly distant from nearby residential properties, while set into the hillside, given the need for the building to maintain a level floor plate relative to surrounding topography. There are therefore no concerns of the development being capable of overshadowing, overbearing or overlooking nearby residential properties, given the ample separation distances between the development and residential areas further south and east, as well as the singular bungalow situated on the other side of Lindley Moor Road. As you can see on the slide, the red line and arrow present the scale of the extension relative to surrounding land. A new embankment is formed by the regrading of the site to allow for the new floor plate, and northern hard standing and the aforementioned security fencing is located in the middle of its slope so as not to protrude above the hillside. This was a specific request from Kirklees landscape officers to minimise landscape impact, and it has been added to, has the added benefit of reducing the heritage harm to the guide stoop and Roman Road in the northeastern part of the site. The bottom section plan provides a view of the site looking north relative to the height of the embankment upon which Lindley Moor Road is situated. The picture at the bottom of the slide is of the prow path that sits between the boundary of the Max site and the rear of houses on Anvil Court. The purpose of this photo is to evidence the 21-metre gap between those residential curtilages and the commercial site. However, members should also be aware that a condition has been added to the recommended decision and agreed with the applicant for a lighting scheme to come forward for this footpath to encourage its sustainable use, especially in the winter months. This will be a significant benefit for the local community. Furthermore, the landscaping proposed on this detailed landscaping plan presents how the development will achieve a 10% on-site biodiversity net gain despite reductions to the greenfield area of the site as a result of the Max Trucks expansion. A native hedgerow is proposed along the length of the public right-of-way to reduce fumes and noise emanating from the site. Relatedly, an operation management plan is requested by condition to further outline how the site intends to minimise air quality impacts from the operation of large vehicles on the site. This is in response to representations made in respect of air quality. Moving on to landscaping, the eastern edge of the site beside Crossland Road will feature wildflower lawn backing onto a mixed native tree and scrub mix, which is estimated to progressively and eventually fully screen the building from view of Crossland Road within a 15-year period. This responds to some represented concerns of the appearance of the building from their homes. The embankment surrounding the building will remain lawn for security purposes. Meanwhile, the area in the northeastern part of the site will be composed of grass and wildflower mix, intermixed with some medium standard trees. The northwestern corner of the site, adjacent to Jaguar Land Rover, is to be provisioned with native trees and bushes to further screen the hard standing from Lindley Moor Road. As previously mentioned, constraints are largely heritage-based, with a Roman road running parallel between Lindley Moor Road and the Max Shed on the left-hand side of the above plan. The Grade 2 star guide stoop is adjacent to the Roman Road within the square box on the left-hand side of the plan, whilst the Grade 2 listed monument Hague Cross is situated in the black box in the top middle of the plan between the eastern elevation of the Max building and Crossland Road. This slide presents the view from the Crossland Road, Lindley Road junction, looking west towards the Roman Road that is present under the grassed area. The Max building is on the left-hand side and the guide stoop is on the right-hand side of the street scene at the bottom of the slide. Kirklees conservation officers did not have initial concerns, but are largely content. Did have initial concerns, but are largely content with the application following subsequent amendments. These include the relocation of the green mesh fence further down the slope, as previously mentioned. This is because it sits quite proud on top of the hill visible from Lindley Road, which impacts the landscape setting of the area, as well as the subterranean integrity of the Roman Road itself. A further amendment includes provision for a replacement stone wall across the northern boundary of the site that will provide a backdrop between the guide stoop and the adjacent Max sign, as pictured. The wall will clearly improve the setting of this heritage asset and shall make it indistinguishable from the land behind. Conservation colleagues have also requested that the Max sign should also be moved to further improve the stoop setting, but there are limited options in this respect, given that the sign needs to provide direction to the site from Lindley Road and has been subject to advertisement consent approval for the location it currently occupies. In any case, there was once a poorly maintained stone wall across the junction arm, so the provision of a new wall is a significant improvement upon the existing situation. In respect of the listed monument, Hague Cross, amendments include the introduction of a stile over the existing stone wall to allow pedestrian access to the monument, as well as an information panel to be erected adjacent to it, and which will explain its heritage significance. The existing green fencing pictured on the slide will also be slightly set back to further improve the setting of Hague Cross. The cumulative impact of the boundary and hardscaping alterations will improve the setting of the listed asset while improving its evidential value to local people. In respect of the public response to the application, 8 representations have been received despite the volume of residential housing surrounding the site to the south and east. Concerns mainly focus on environmental health issues and views of the site which have been responded to through revisions to the landscaping design and through recommended conditions put to members in the officer report. KC Environmental Health have no objections and require several conditions, including a construction environmental management plan, noise survey and impact assessment, as well as a remediation strategy for the contaminated land and element. Overall, the development is forwarded by the applicant to enable them to expand their business and invest in the borough and its people. There are no overriding policy issues in respect of the principle of development and some minor issues in respect of harm to heritage assets, such as the guide stoop, which are considered to be less than substantial and clearly outweighed by the wider public benefit in respect of sustainable economic growth and an on-site biodiversity net gain. Thank you.
One speaker, Richard Irving.
Thank you. Chair, members of committee, there is not a great deal I wish to add to what is an extremely comprehensive planning officer's report and indeed presentation, which highlights all of the salient planning issues of relevance and which confirms that there are no objections from statutory consultees and that the proposals by Max Trucks are policy compliant. You will have seen on site this morning the reason why there is such a pressing need for this application following a period of rapid expansion. As set out in the officer's report, the company's decision to consolidate in Kirklees and make the headquarters of the business off Crossland Road has been a complete success story. It is clearly for this reason the company wishes to expand the existing workshop and increase the yard area and provide additional car parking, and by doing this can create new job opportunities, with 2 of the new members of staff being trained to become skilled technicians, building upon the company's existing apprenticeship relationships with local colleges. What I also want to emphasise on behalf of Max Trucks is the collaborative and collective working approach to ensuring that any concerns raised by officers during negotiations on the application were dealt with, and the company is grateful to the planning officers for their input as we sought to resolve all issues raised to come to a balanced planning decision to recommend approval. As we continue through difficult times, the fact that a local company who has continued to grow from strength to strength, having relocated and consolidated in Kirklees, now wishes to create more job opportunities can only be described as a good news story, particularly at this time of the year. The company remains committed to the area and accepts all of the conditions proposed to be attached to the grant of planning permission. We will continue to work with your professional officers as we look to discharge the relevant conditions, such that the job opportunities afforded by this development proposal can be delivered as soon as practically possible in the new year. Chair, I would simply urge you and your members to uphold the recommendations of your planning officer and grant consent accordingly. Thank you.
Members, it's over to you. Come on.
Thank you, Chair. I've been on the site visit this morning, I think it's the first time I've seen this Mack truck sales factory. I was really impressed. Yeah, how big this factory is and you provide in the local benefit to the local economy. So I think this application, they are extending the workshop. I think it will create some more job. I think about 15 extra job. That's good for the Huddersfield area. One thing is, I was reading the public response from one thing, he said the cranes are regularly extended on the site, which negatively affects the appearance of the local area. I actually, myself, I have noticed there some cranes are up there. I don't think there is a need for that. Yeah, further keep it down, because I think the neighboring residential area, they don't like that if you put some condition on there. So overall, I think there is no reason why we don't recommend or support officer recommendations, so I move it.
Thank you, Chair. Those of us with long memories will remember that much more of this site was for business use, and I still think it's a pity that we've got so much housing in that area. Mixed uses are a mixed blessing, really, because you can always run into the problem that Councillor Sokol has mentioned, about one conflicting with the other. But one of the things that impressed me with our site visit this morning, like Councillor Sokol, was what a great range of stuff that they were doing on site, including supplying vehicles, but also making specialist bits of equipment to go on the vehicles as well. And as far as I'm concerned, long may they continue in that job. I think that all the issues that could have arisen in terms of making this acceptable on the site have been dealt with. I mean, I think perhaps a bit more can be done to draw attention to the fact that there are not very many Grade 2 star monuments or listed buildings anywhere in Kirklees, so the fact that there's one there, it ought to be drawn attention to much more. I'm not quite clear. I'm assuming that's actually on the site. If the boundary goes right up to the corner, I know that's an incidental to the main business here, but the fact that you've got something like that there, they might be able to make something of it at some point. The fact that there is this apparently unassuming piece of stone, well, it's a bit more than that actually, is there. So it's a good news story, I think, and I'm happy to support the thank you, yes, officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got to agree really with what's been already said. I mean, Max Trucks has come on a long way, to be honest, and has really extended. I mean, I remember when it were up in Outland and it was just a small yard, basically, and a bit of a garage. So, you know, it's good to see that a business like that is flourishing, and it's also nice to read that, you know, they're taking on more staff and apprenticeships. So, yeah, happy to support.
When I say very impressive, God, we went up to have a look at that site visit. We're good. Right, well, it's been moved, it's been seconded, so we'll go for a vote.
Thank you. So obviously this is a vote to approve as outlined in the submitted report. Councillor Bellamy?
For.
Councillor Pinnock?
For.
Councillor Sokol?
For.
Councillor Patterson? Councillor Greaves?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
That's unanimous, so the recommendation to approve has been granted.
Right, finally, last one for today, Waterloo Road. We're visiting that one again. William, I believe it is.
Thank you, Chair. My name is William Simcock and I am the case officer for this application. This application is for the change of use of a building to hot food takeaway. It is brought to a strategic committee on account of the site being urban green space, which makes it technically a departure from the development plan. It was... Excuse me. It was originally presented at the October Strategic Committee, was deferred on grounds of highways issues, so the potential for possible alternative access arrangements both within the site and possibly the closing of the Wakefield Road access could be explored, and also the potential for shortening the hours of use could be explored. Next slide, please. As the site comprises a former vehicle servicing centre, repairs, garage, car sales pitch and auto parts centre currently vacant and associated hard surfaced areas. Next please. And it's written an area of mixed uses, although the adjacent Waterloo Road is strongly residential. And I shall briefly explain and comment on the highways issue, since this formed a major part of the reason for it was being deferred. As I noted in my report on the last presentation, the junction already serves a high volume of traffic, and queues are sometimes observed in Waterloo Road at busy times. And the original highway consultant's report found there would be a small net increase in trip generation, but this wouldn't be very significant. The more recent and updated consultant's report has found a substantial net reduction in overall trip generation once all the previous uses are taken into account. And furthermore, there have been changes to the proposed layout. Next, please. And that just shows the existing aerial view. Next one, please. And the next. This shows in brief the current proposals. That it's proposed that there would be a vehicle passageway formed in the right-hand part of the buildings, indicated by the pink dashed line, by the partial demolition of the front and rear, and this would provide space for stacking of vehicles who are coming to collect. It's proposed that that most of the trade would either be delivery or click and collect, and the balance being, yes, it's predicted 65% will be delivery and 30% click and collect. And it's also proposed that the Wakefield Road access would remain open, but as an exit only. Next slide, please. And these also show the proposed vehicle pathways. And Wakefield would be also left turn only. And in addition to the signage that was previously proposed, there would also be what I call vehicle plates, which would prevent it being used as an ingress point. Vehicle flow plates, that's the term I was looking for. The applicant has set out why the complete closure of the Wakefield Road access would not be the desired option. Highways Development Management are of the view that new arrangements are an improvement both on those previously presented to committee and also on the arrangements that would have existed under the old use, or if the old use was resumed. And bringing the site into use will as well as the various other changes, will discourage people using it as a shortcut to avoid the junction. Committee members previously expressed concerns about the opening hours. The applicant has confirmed that alternative hours of 8 AM till 10:30 Sundays to Thursdays, 8 AM till 11 PM Fridays and Saturdays would be acceptable from an operational point of view, which is a slight reduction on the hours of 7 AM till 11 PM originally proposed. Environmental Health are happy with the scheme with the opening hours. Next slide, please. And that just shows further details of circulation. Next one, please. I believe that someone is speaking on behalf of the applicant, so they may want to refer to some of these slides later on. Next slide, please. I just want the one that shows shows a generic internal, well, not generic, an approximate internal layout under the current new proposals. So Environmental Health, as I said, are happy with this, with the hours, subject to conditions, including acoustic report, suitable details and methods for odour treatments and lighting, so it's light spill or glare will not occur. Returning to one of the issues I mentioned earlier regarding conformity with the local plan, about 1/5 of the development site is within urban green space, as was shown in one of the earlier slides, which is shown in shaded green. However, as it involves no new build and does not involve an expansion of any existing hard surfacing or loss of landscaping or trees, there is effectively no loss of urban green space, and it would, although it is technically not in conformity with the wording of LP 61, it is considered acceptable from that point of view as a departure. It's an edge of centre site, and sequential test has been submitted which found no available sequentially preferable sites, and it is therefore considered it would not result in the undermining of existing commercial centres. Furthermore, West Yorkshire Police do not object, provided a closed circuit television scheme is installed which can be conditioned, and it's considered there be no adverse public health impacts. And to sum up, it is considered that on the basis of the plans and information supplied, which are in some ways an improvement on the version presented to committee 2 months ago, the proposed development would not give rise to additional highway safety problems, and furthermore that subject to suitable conditions it would not give rise to an adverse effect on residential amenity or crime and disorder or other factors. And finally, the reuse of an existing building within an accessible location would in principle be compatible and supportive of the Council's carbon reduction aims, and the installation of 2 electric charge points can be conditioned. It is therefore recommended that conditional permission is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, William. Right, first speaker is Councillor Muscam.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the agent's offer to reduce both the morning and evening opening hours. However, I still have a number of concerns in relation to increased traffic at Waterloo Road and Wakefield Road Junction, and the impact that this will have on the residential amenities in the area. There's a fundamental flaw in the figures for trip generation, which were submitted on the 4th of November 2021, which supposedly took into account all 3 of the previous users. According to residents in the area, the petrol filling station has not been used at the site for 15 years. It's not been a petrol filling station for 15 years. The car showroom was closed many years ago with cars only sold on the forecourt, and the car repairs were stopped 2 years ago and only the shop remained. How can an accurate comparison be taken between previous users and the proposed new users be made when many of the stated function of the previous use have not been in operation for a considerable period of time? And I don't support the complete closure of the Wakefield Road exit and support the left turn only proposal and retaining both access points. If all vehicles had to exit by means of Waterloo Road, there would be more congestion within the site at the Waterloo Road, Wakefield Road junction. And I also ask the committee to consider the residential amenities for households at number 1, 3, 5 and 7 Waterloo Road. The slip road between Wakefield Road and Waterloo Road serves as access to these properties. The slip road is the only means of a left-hand turn from Wakefield Road onto Waterloo Road. The occupants are elderly people, and reversing out of drives is difficult as it is and would be made worse by increased traffic flow to the proposed takeaway. There is a risk of increased congestion outside these properties, as the Keep Clear sign at the access point on Waterloo Road to the site is frequently ignored by motorists, and it obstructs the access to that site on a regular basis. I'd like the committee to action a detailed traffic impact assessment which includes the slip road and current driver behaviour at the access point of the site at Waterloo Road, please. Thank you.
Next speaker is David Coley.
Good afternoon. My name's David Colley. I'm an Associate Director with Sanderson Associates, Highway Consultants. We have prepared the highway information and plans to support the planning application. The Planning Officer's report notes the highway reasons for deferral raised by the committee, and these are the potential for closure of one of the access points, the arrangements within the forecourt for movement of vehicles, and traffic movements in and around the site. All these matters have been addressed through the amended plans shown on the screen, that have been shown on the screen, and members' attention is drawn to paragraphs 10.32 and 10.41, which provide a summary of the information. With regard to rat running, the main improvements to note are there is no longer a clear path from Waterloo Road to the exit on Wakefield Road, as collection customers have to turn left on entering the site and use the collection lane, At the moment, there's currently about 30% of customers using the app for click and collect, 5% being passed by, and the other 65% are home delivery. We have included a traffic island, signage, road markings, curbing, fencing and CCTV. Furthermore, a bollard has been introduced to the front forecourt, which only allows access for delivery vehicles. Entry from Wakefield Road is controlled by flow plates, which physically stop vehicles entering and exit is at left turn only, with curbing, fencing, signage proposed to discourage a right turn movement. The highway officer notes that the proposals offer a much improved forecourt layout, as it is a more tortuous route for any driver intent on cutting through the site. This is further discouraged with a bollard on the forecourt, which is noted in point 10.36 of the report. I would also agree with this statement. With regard to closing off of Wakefield Road, the highway officer stated a preference to close the access, but that this is not essential for the development to proceed. Furthermore, the report notes the view of both the highway and planning officers is that the new arrangement is acceptable in highway safety terms, which I concur with. We also note from the report that there have been no recorded or related accidents attributable to the Wakefield Road exit or immediate area based on the current unrestricted use of the access in the last 10 years. Importantly, these proposals would not increase the propensity for accidents. The proposals include measures to restrict access to left turn only, and a large proportion of deliveries already being made to Lepton, Flockton and Kirkburton areas, which requires the left turn and will cause less congestion both on site and at the access egress. We therefore recommend that the committee considers this for approval now. Thank you.
Next is Nick Willock.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Nick Willock, planning consultant representing the applicant. Mr Brown, the applicant, very much wanted to address the committee today, as he did previously, but is unfortunately isolating for COVID-related reasons. A few further points on highway matters. The Harvey's Ordering app manages an appointment-based collection and delivery service. This app specifies precise order and delivery time slots and will therefore even out kitchen backups and traffic peaks in and around the site. 17 parking spaces are provided, which is accepted to be ample provision, and with the improved layout before you today, stacking space for up to 8 vehicles is also provided, relieving congestion at the entrance. Thirdly, highways officers confirmed that there would be no material impact on the traffic levels or signalised junction. Turning then to residential amenity matters, the temporary takeaway facility at the nearby Fenny Bridge restaurant is also adjacent to residential properties, and there have been no problems or complaints throughout the pandemic when the takeaway element has been very busy. As such, concerns raised about customers potentially creating noise or antisocial behaviour are not considered to be well-founded in this case. Environmental health and crime prevention officers agree and raise no objections subject to conditions. The applicant has also agreed to shorter opening hours, as you've heard, and 2 electric charging points for staff and delivery vehicles in response to officer comments and those of the planning committee previously. Members, Huddersfield is currently over-reliant on inward investment from national and in particular American chains, leading to the same brands being seen wherever you go and profits being taken out of the local economy. This scheme represents a significant investment from a successful, independent local business, which will add to the vibrancy of the area and provide more healthy and varied food choices for customers. This will be even more important as it looks increasingly likely we will be entering further COVID restrictions. The application is fully supported by all council consultees and your planning and highway officers. We do not consider there are reasonable grounds for refusal in this case, and on behalf of Mr Brown and his team, we sincerely hope you'll be able to support this exciting new business venture for Huddersfield. Thank you.
Next is Simon Doherty.
Good afternoon, Chair.
My name is Simon Doherty, the co-owner of Harvey's Bar Kitchen and the proposed operator of the takeaway site at Crown Motors. As you've seen from today, from the Councillor's updated report and my colleagues' presentations to you today, we have fully addressed the committee members' concerns from the last meeting. As we said at the last committee meeting, this takeaway already exists as a part of Harvey's Bar Kitchen at Fenny Bridge, which is 800 metres away from the site. But it's clear to us our public house sites are not set up for out sales, and it's already conflicting with our recovering restaurant operation. We therefore need a standalone site, close to Fenny Bridge site, where our current customer database exists. The proposed site takeaway will serve fresh food, prepared daily, sourced from local sustainable suppliers. Therefore, no freezers, no microwaves, simply fresh cooked food, incorporated with a breakfast, lunch and evening offering. It's important to us as a business to offer a well-balanced, healthy menu, accounting for dietary requirements and the ever-growing allergens. Having professional chefs within our company will allow us to create this. For the record, we will only be using our own employed reliable delivery drivers. So that's not Just Eat, Deliveroo or Urban Eats and all other subcontractors for that matter. This strategy will promote a proper, responsible delivery service. Also, as mentioned, our Harvey's ordering app allows our customers to do a click and collect on a time slot basis and also on a delivery slot by appointment basis, therefore avoiding queues in the kitchen and congestion in the forecourt. We are a well-respected award-winning local business proposing to redevelop a sustainable vacant brownfield site, offering an alternative option to fast food in the case of fresh food for us and an existing and evolving customer base. We therefore respectfully ask the committee to support us. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I think I can agree that our concerns, or certainly my concerns from the last time this was presented, have been met. I was particularly worried about the flow of traffic within the site and the ability to cut across the corner there to avoid the traffic lights. I think, and also sort of people turning right into the site from Wakefield Road, which I think that's been, that those plates to stop the traffic turning in there, I think is a great addition. I think the left turn only as well, as long as it's respected, is sufficient, and also the bollard and the way the traffic flows, etc. I think that will prevent that cut through across that corner. We'll need that keep clear sign though outside, and there will for traffic turning right into the site from Wakefield Road or from via Waterloo Road, because that is a pinch point, I believe, so that has to be there. I'm pleased to see much improved plans here, and I wouldn't disagree that I really like the idea of the app and Harvey's having all the local food, local delivery drivers, etc., etc. So I'm happy to recommend approval of this application. Yeah, sorry, I'm moving it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think the applicants have sort of, come back and done what we asked them to do. I mean, this stops, hopefully, it being a cut through, and that was my big concern, cutting through and getting back onto Wakefield Road. They've reduced their hours as we asked, so I think that, they've answered everything. So I'm quite happy to second Councillor Patterson. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
this site has been underused for an awful long time, so whatever its future use is going to be a bit of a change. I think the proposal and the access arrangements are appropriate for it, though. The area I want to flag up again is the urban green space. It is peculiar that the parking area is washed over as urban green space. I can only assume it's supposed to form part of the access to the riverbank, which is to one side of it. If anything, I'm happy to see this this application approved, but I think again it just illustrates the point that we just need to clarify our urban green space policy and perhaps reconsider some areas that have been washed over where perhaps the justification for doing so is not so obvious. In terms of policy, I'm not sure that it means the policy. It is still going to remain as parking though, so it's no material change. But this urban green space issue, there's areas where it's really important to be able to defend the line, and that means that we need to have a strong, coherent policy, and that wherever we do identify as urban green spaces is for the right reasons, then we can defend it. But I'm happy to go along with approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I honestly am still not convinced because this junction on Bigfield Road, Waterloo Road and the Sheffield Road is very busy in the Huddersfield area. Yeah, you can see, especially on the peak hours in the morning and afternoon, it's terrible. Yeah, because it's leading to motorway and the Sheffield both sides. So I'm still not convinced. If we want to approve this application, I'm thinking it should be a trial period, something like 12 months. Yeah, we see how it goes. But otherwise, I'm not supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The point that Councillor Sokol has just made is one that I have been thinking about. And that is a temporary permission. But then I sort of think, well, the applicants have got to make quite a lot of investment in order to make this site usable from their point of view. They've got to do quite a lot of highway works, or pay for quite a lot of highway works, put it that way, in order that the site can be used in the safest possible way, because it's not an ideal site. I wouldn't wish anybody to run away with that idea. However, the applicants are showing great enterprise in taking it on and kind of doing something with it that meets with the approval of both planning and the highways officers. But would I go to the length of suggesting a temporary permission? No, I don't think I would. But I think what we should do is grant permission, but make some arrangement to monitor what goes on the site. I don't know quite how we do that, because on the whole we tend not to put that into permissions. But it does seem to me that given the nature of the site, it would be a good idea to see if what is being proposed actually works, and indeed if anything in the proposal is subsequently discovered not to work, or at least not to work in the way they were expecting it to. As I say, I do think this is a wholly enterprising idea. I wish the applicants well in what they're doing, especially all the things that have been said about local staff, local produce, and so on. That is definitely to be commended. I mean, I'm doing so publicly, obviously, but I do think we should think about means of monitoring this site, as maybe we should in some other cases. But this one is before us, and I think that along with granting permission, I think we should make some arrangements for monitoring.
Do you want to answer that, William, or do you want to answer it?
Yes, through you, Chair, but it's in response to Councillor Pinnock's concerns. Yes, Councillor Pinnock is right to say that a temporary permission would not be appropriate in this case because of the substantial investment required, and even the catering equipment, the fixtures and fittings before you start on the highways alterations. But as arrangements for ongoing monitoring, there isn't really a provision for doing that through the development management process, a sort of proactive monitoring of sites that are being given planning permission to see what effect it's having on the highways, and or if it is not working the way we anticipated, whether it can be changed in some way. Perhaps one of my senior colleagues would like to offer any additional thoughts on that. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair. Ryan Kindow, Development Management. We could condition an operational management plan which monitors how it's being run, and if needs be, change the hours of operation or look to close that access if it's becoming an issue. That's all I can suggest. Thank you.
So can I just confirm, because we had...
I'm happy for that to be... Was it me? Yeah, I did. I'm happy for that suggestion to be added to the recommendations.
And Councillor Bellamy, who seconded it? Was it Councillor?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it comes to that. So what we're saying then is we're going for a vote.
Yeah.
On the basis of the officer recommendation to approve, subject to the additional condition of the operational management plan. Is that right? Yep. Okay. Right. So, Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Pinnock.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
Against.
Councillor Patterson.
For.
Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Hall.
For.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 1 against. So the officer recommendation to approve has been granted.
And I make it, that's it. So have a good Christmas. Don't be going to any secret parties. And we'll see you next year.